30 years ago, a new subgenre of television programming emerged, focused on elaborately costumed live-action superheroes, robots, and giant monsters from Japan, adapted to look like they were from the US, and some that actually were from the US. This is a compilation of Secret Galaxy episodes that examines the various successes and failures from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers to the Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog. This is just a small selection of shows from a time when producers were actively seeking to promote what in Japan had been standard weekly programming since the 1950s and remains through today. A sampling of a strange pocket of science fiction born from reskinned Japanese television aimed at kids as a way to save money and sell more toys. Whether you know the names of the original Power Rangers or not, whether you can tell a superhuman samurai from a big bad Beetleborg doesn't matter. This is East meets West by way of content localization. Listen or watch along as we bring together a story of Tokusatsu in America. Power Rangers franchise began in 1993 with the series titled Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It introduced the concept of 5 teenagers recruited to join a team of primary color costumed superheroes tasked with protecting the world from evil. The teens are supplied with everything they need in their fight against Space Witch Rita Repulsa by Zordon, a giant benevolent space head floating in a tube of light. Zordon and his partner Alpha 5 provide them with these suits that enhance their physical abilities, a base, super weapons like guns, swords, and axes, and giant transforming robots called Zords that can combine to form an ultimate weapon called a Megazord. Over 3 seasons from 1993 through 1995, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers established the template for the tone, visuals, and overall plot progression. With each successive season, the composition of the team cycles through new cast members, new themes, new Zords, and new threats to Earth, a refresh pattern that continues today. Power Rangers was created by Haim Saban and Shuki Levy through their television and music production company, Saban Productions. Saban Productions, founded in 1980, would grow and evolve into Saban Entertainment in 1988. During that time, Saban happened to be in Japan, where he happened to see a show called Bioman. Chodenshi Bioman, or in English, Super Electron Bioman, was a show about a team of primary color costume superheroes protecting the world from evil with special suits that enhance their physical abilities, super weapons like guns and swords, and giant transforming vehicles that can combine to form an ultimate weapon called Bio-Robo. It aired in Japan from February of 1984 to January of 1985. At the time, it was the 8th installment of the Super Sentai series, which had begun in 1975 with Himitsu Sentai Go Ranger, or in English, Secret Squadron Go Ranger. Saban could see the potential for adapting Bioman into English and bringing it to the United States. In 1985, he cut together a pilot for a Bioman episode and shopped it around the networks, who each took turns saying no. Saban wasn't the first to recognize the potential and try to import Super Sentai to the US. A few years earlier, Stan Lee and Marvel attempted the same thing with the 5th Super Sentai team, Taiyo Sentai's Son Vulcan. What a different world we would be living in if only. Imagine Power Rangers kicking off 10 years earlier with my favorite Sentai team produced by Marvel. Today, maybe even part of the MCU. After having completed a successful 3-year character exchange partnership with Toei that saw Shogun Warriors comics from Marvel in the US and a Japanese Spider-Man television show in Japan, Stan was enamored with the action and presentation of the Japanese superhero shows and thought it could work in Hollywood. The networks disagreed. For more on that, check out our video all about Japanese Spider-Man and his influence on the Super Sentai and Power Rangers genre. There are several benefits to importing pre-existing content. Number 1, it already exists. You save a lot of time and money when you don't have to conceive, develop, and produce the whole thing from scratch. An episode of Power Rangers is nearly 30% complete before anyone at Saban has done anything. When Toei is done with costumes and props for a given season of Super Sentai, send all that stuff with the completed episode footage over to Saban to be redubbed with the English-speaking actors, who will shoot any additional fill-in segments to develop a plot unique to the US audience. Most of the fight scenes and just about anything in costume is already done, including visual effects. Names and locations can be changed, shots can be reused if necessary or eliminated, chronology can be shifted, characters from one season can be moved to another. New characters can be created that were never there to begin with. Heck, 153 episodes of Kyoryu Sentai Zyu Ranger, Gosei Sentai Dai Ranger, and Ninja Sentai Kaku Ranger became 145 episodes of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and 10 episodes of Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers. Whatever it was originally in terms of narrative only matters to the extent that it needs to be clearly communicated to the new audience and the proprietary branded characters. Ultimately, the only thing that really matters is eyeballs on screens and toys on the shelves, because that is where the money is made. Power Rangers is the name of the brand. The first 3 seasons are called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but everything after that, every new season, every refresh gets its own title. Power Rangers Turbo, Power Rangers in Space, Power Rangers Time Force, Power Rangers SPD, Power Rangers Megaforce. Each season adapts a season that has already run in Japan, anywhere from 1 year earlier to as much as 7 years ago. Toei discovered very early in the process that Super Sentai programs were a great vehicle, pun intended, for selling all kinds of toys and action figures, robots and comics and clothes and video games and anything else you can slap a logo on. It was that kind of merchandising power that Saban was hoping to take advantage of, and did. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers found its home on Fox Kids, a block of children's television programming Monday through Friday from 2 to 5 p.m. That's the magic hour for weekday kids programming, and Fox Kids was already a kids' TV juggernaut. Batman the Animated Series was the anchor beginning in September of 1992, but other heavy hitters cycled through. Tiny Toon Adventures, X-Men the Animated Series, Eek the Cat, Super Dave, Daredevil for Hire, and reruns of Alvin and the Chipmunks, Muppet Babies, and Beetlejuice. It was the convergence of some of the biggest pop culture brands of the decade. The interest in superhero shows was already cultivated with Batman and X-Men. Saban's Power Rangers found exactly the right outlet to reach exactly the right audience. In 1994, Batman, the X-Men, and Power Rangers would all be joined by Spider-Man, the Tick, and Animaniacs, a lineup that no other network could compete with, and every one of them driving kids directly to the toy aisle to continue the adventures at home. Not only did these Super Sentai shows already exist for Saban to repurpose, but supporting merchandise did as well. Action figures, transformable Zords, roleplay items. Saban partnered with Bandai America to make sure that anything and everything a child of the 90s could want related to Power Rangers would be available, or at least they would try. Power Rangers was so popular at launch that there were difficulties maintaining stock levels. It was one of the hot holiday toys of 1993 and 1994.
The Power Rangers have grown into a billion-dollar business with a vast array of licensed products from over 250 licensees worldwide.
The cycle of product refresh season after season was a godsend for toy retailers at the time and long into the future for online marketplaces like eBay.
Transforming action, Power Rangers. This is Zordon. It's transforming time. Evil space aliens are approaching your location. Combine your weapons. It's your only hope. Karate action, Power Rangers. Use your hand-to-hand fighting abilities. Protect the Earth from evil space aliens. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers from Bandai. Grab the power.
Power Rangers have been featured in comics since 1994 at companies like Hamilton, Marvel, Image, and Disney, most recently in multiple series by Boom Studios, which introduced an alternate dystopian potential future where Lord Drakon has defeated not only Rita Repulsa, but all of the Rangers, and now he's come to Earth to do the same. Power Rangers video games were produced for nearly every console and handheld system since the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. Today you can play Power Rangers Battle for the Grid on your favorite system, whether it's Xbox, PlayStation, or Nintendo Switch, which also features Lord Drakon. Power Rangers was a multimedia and pop culture phenomenon right out of the gate, and that strength grew over successive seasons. Saban Entertainment continued to develop the Power Rangers brand from 1993 to 2001, when the all-seeing eye of the Walt Disney Company took notice. Seeking a boys' complement to their explosive Disney Princesses brand, which did $300 million in its first year of existence, Disney bought out Fox Family Worldwide, which included Saban Entertainment and the Power Rangers franchise. The Power Rangers were going to be the Disney Ninja Princes, if you will. But Disney's relationship with Power Rangers wasn't as natural a fit as their own characters developed internally over the course of nearly 70 years. Several affiliates, regardless of Disney's ownership of the networks, would not air Power Rangers shows due to conflicts with FCC regulations, specifically a lack of any educational or informational content as required by the Children's Television Act of 1990.
But critics point to the violence, and they say this is a bad message for children, no matter how the producers try to package it.
If you're in the right, it's okay to use weapons, it's okay to use force, it's okay to hurt, to maim, to kill. And that's a pretty sad message to be giving children.
By 2009, Disney was ready to move on and announced that instead of developing the creation of a new season based on the 2009 Super Sentai show, Samurai Sentai Shinkenger, they would just rebroadcast the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in 2010 and wash their hands of the whole thing. Besides, they had just found their new boys' line sweethearts with the acquisition of Marvel Entertainment, thanks in no small part to the billions of dollars in accumulated Disney Princesses revenue. After Disney bought the Power Rangers, Saban Entertainment reinvented itself as BVS Entertainment in 2002. In 2010, when Disney was ready to unload the franchise, Saban was there with $43 million to reacquire everything Disney had purchased during the Fox family buyout. Saban got right back to business with the production of a new series called Power Rangers Samurai based on the 2009 Super Sentai series Samurai Sentai Shinkenger. The first episode aired in February of 2011, and Saban announced the production of a new Power Rangers movie, which was ultimately never actually released or completed. The first Power Ranger feature film, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the Movie, was released in June of 1995, featuring the cast of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers from Season 2 and 3. It helped tell the story of the transition from Zords and themes based on Zoo Ranger and Die Ranger in Seasons 1 and 2, to Zords and themes based on Kaku Ranger, where the television production would begin to pull new fight footage from for Season 3. While feature films have long been a part of these Super Sentai seasons, this was a uniquely Power Rangers creation. It contained no recycled footage from the Japanese productions. With a $15 million budget, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie grossed $13.1 million in its first weekend. And despite Roger Ebert's half-star review stating that it was, quote, as close as you can get to nothing and still have a product to project on the screen, end quote, it did $66 million worldwide, making it a huge financial success. It was followed by Turbo, a Power Rangers movie 2 years later in 1997. Setting up the new car-based season, Power Rangers Turbo, it was a box office, I don't want to say disappointment, but at this point the gloss from the original team had worn off a bit, the refresh formula was beginning to set in, and the original audience had mostly moved on. That said, Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, did just over $8 million total, and that is disappointing. Disappointing enough to refocus all efforts on television only for a very long time. Power Rangers wouldn't return to theaters in any form until 20 years later in 2017 in an attempt to go back to the beginning and reboot the whole thing amidst a world of thriving superhero franchises. With a budget of $100 million, the film, simply titled Power Rangers, earned a total of $142 million worldwide. Reviews were mixed, but a sequel was still heavily hinted at, as Saban and the rest of the production had plans for up to 6 or 7 films. I mean, why stop there? Give me a call. We can get this thing up to 24, 25 easy. In 2013, Power Rangers celebrated its 20th anniversary with Power Rangers Megaforce, an adaptation of the 2010 Super Sentai series Tensu Sentai Go Seizure. Power Rangers Megaforce operated the same way the previous 2 seasons operated, by breaking up the 45-episode season into 2 halves. 23 episodes of Power Rangers Samurai was broadcast from February to December of 2011. 22 episodes of Power Rangers Super Samurai was broadcast from February of 2012 to December of 2012. Power Rangers Super Megaforce, based on 2011's Kaizoku Sentai Go Kaiger, brought back Power Rangers from the previous 20 seasons of the show in a celebration of the long and colorful history of the Power Rangers franchise. 2015 through 2018 broke up 2 different Super Sentai programs into 4 Power Rangers seasons. With the success of the Power Rangers movie in 2017, it seemed like a new era of Power Rangers was beginning to emerge. And it was, just not like that. In February of 2018, Saban abruptly announced that their 25-year business partnership with Bandai America had concluded, sparking immediate speculation about the future of all parties involved. Was Saban in trouble? Was Bandai America in trouble? Was Power Rangers in trouble? Immediately after that announcement, Saban also announced that Hasbro was the new global master toy licensor for Power Rangers. Hasbro was adding to its slate of globally popular toy licenses that already included Marvel, Star Wars, Transformers, G.I. Joe, My Little Pony, among others. The final shoe would drop as Saban and Hasbro announced that Hasbro was not only the master toy licensor, but that they were buying Power Rangers altogether. All of it. All the Rangers, the shows, the toys, the names, the Zords, everything for just $522 million. Power Rangers Beast Morphers, Hasbro's first season of Power Rangers based on 2012's Tokume Sentai Go Busters, debuted in March of 2019. It was produced by AllSpark, Hasbro's entertainment division. Utilizing the same formula as every season before, Beast Morphers inherits the theme, costumes, props from its Japanese counterpart, but creates a completely original story with a new cast. And there's a new company making the toys. Power Rangers was a pop culture phenomenon from day one. Over its quarter of a century in existence, it has become one of the most profitable, most beloved, multi-generational franchises in history, as evidenced by Power Morphicon, the biennial fan convention focused on everything Power Rangers. Power Rangers has developed the kind of stability that allows it to maintain its popularity through the ups and downs of trends or the audience growing up and moving on to other things. It is such a part of our shared pop culture that Hasbro and Saban have established August 28th, National Power Rangers Day, in observance of the day that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers first aired in 1993. And you can rewatch it all right now on your favorite streaming service, something truly incredible considering how many episodes exist and how many different companies have produced and owned them. Thank you to Factor for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description below and use code GALAXY50 for 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month of orders today. For years, I ate the same thing for breakfast and lunch, not because I liked it, but because it was cheap and easy. I didn't have the time to think of what I wanted to eat, to shop for what I wanted to eat, or to make what I wanted to eat. No more drive-through hamburgers, no more food court pizza, no more gas station hot dogs. Factor took all that stress off my plate and replaced it with actual food, real ingredients that taste good and are fast and simple to prepare. Choose how many meals you want, when you want them, heat and savor the good stuff. Factor is now owned by HelloFresh, and with a wider array of meal plans to choose from, there's something for everyone. It's easy to switch between the brands to make your meal planning even easier. Head to Factor75.com or click the link below and use code GALAXY50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next box today. That's code GALAXY50 at Factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders. And thanks again to Factor. What if Frankenstein, the monster, not the doctor, was actually a success? And by success, I mean came to life, was totally cool, people genuinely liked him. So the doctor decided to create another monster, but this time using more parts than before, totally misunderstanding what made the original creation a success in the first place. Not the quantity of parts, but how well they fit together. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of VR Troopers. VR Troopers is a live-action superhero television series that ran for 92 episodes over 2 seasons from 1994 to 1996. It is related to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the same way fettuccine alfredo is related to macaroni and cheese. Fair warning, I wrote this script while I was waiting for dinner. Ryan Steele, Caitlin Starr, and JB Reese are 3 late-stage teenagers. I don't want to say with attitude, but they are certainly attitude-prone. They are 3 friends living in a place called Crossworld City, California, which is practically... It is based on a real city in California, even though it isn't a real city in California. All 3, along with Ryan's dog Jeb, hang out, train, and sometimes work at Tao's Dojo, the local karate academy run by their friend and sensei Tao Chong. Caitlin works at a local newspaper called the Underground Voice Daily, where her work frequently finds her exposing billionaire developer Carl Zichter's attempts to remake Crossworld City one building at a time. 10 years ago, Ryan's father, Tyler Steele, disappeared while conducting some top-secret research into virtual reality. Virtual reality, it turns out, is not what we have understood it to be. It's more like an alternate reality. Virtual reality is a parallel dimension full of mutant robots that are trying to find a way into our dimension to take over. Hell of a thing. One day, Ryan, JB, and Caitlin are summoned to a secret laboratory wherein the near-life holographic artificial intelligence Professor Horatio Hart resides. It's so much like the real thing in just about every detail, almost as good as the actual man himself. In life, Horatio Hart was a friend and collaborator of Ryan's father, Tyler. Horatio tells the story of Tyler's work into the interdimensional ramifications of the highly advanced virtual reality work that he was conducting. It resulted in Tyler's disappearance and, essentially, Horatio's rebirth as a digital entity after an evil being called Grimlord breached the reality barrier that keeps the two dimensions separate. Professor Hart is, for all intents and purposes, the Zordon of the series. He provides Ryan, JB, and Caitlin with information as well as new battle suits and vehicles and weapons they will need in the fight against Grimlord, the evil ruler of the virtual reality dimension. Because the fight has already begun, evil is on the verge of making sufficient gains. Spoiler alert, Grimlord is Carl Zichter, and he is preparing the way on both sides of the reality barrier for a full invasion of his entire army. Ryan, the leader and most disciplined martial artist, JB, the science and computer whiz, and Caitlin, the photographer and journalist, must utilize their new virtualizer pendants, say the words Trooper Transform, and become VR troopers. Guardians of the reality barrier, it's going to take everything they have to fight for this dimension and, with any luck, find Ryan's father. VR Troopers was produced by Saban Entertainment in cooperation with Toei Company and Syber Prod. It premiered in the US in September of 1994, just a year after the previous collaboration between Saban and Toei, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was pretty much an overnight success. Saban's production had successfully utilized licensed footage, costumes, and props from an existing Japanese television show called Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger. Recut it with new script, American actors, and new branding, the whole equaling far more than the sum of its parts. With the formula in hand, Saban's team raced to replicate the success with a second project. Power Rangers was a quick and cost-efficient way to produce a show, but there was no way to know how long the window of opportunity would remain open with the American audience, nor could they stop any other studios from doing the same thing with other Japanese shows. Hello. The first draft of VR Troopers was a show called Psycon. The character of Adam Steele would merge with a cyborg called Psycon, as opposed to being inside a high-tech battlesuit. Grimlord was Cyrus Riker instead of Carl Zichter, and he commanded an army of cyber drones. Cyrus's son Percy and Adam had a Karate Kid Johnny versus Daniel type relationship. The focus was singular, no JB, no Caitlin. Tao Chong is still there as a mentor, but we only have one hero to worry about, only one show to borrow footage from. That concept evolved into a show called Cybertron. Yes, just like the planet where the Transformers are from. No, not related in any way. Yes, it would have been challenged by Hasbro even then. In this version, Adam Steele was played by Jason David Frank. Footage would be pulled from Chojinki Metalda or Superhuman Machine Metalda. Your pronunciation may vary. Again, a singular character fighting war drones led by Grimlord. Grimlord is Cyrus Richter in our world. He has a son named Percy who is in a Karate Kid, Johnny versus Daniel type relationship. Tao Chong is back. Tao has a daughter named Mia, and this version has its own Bulk and Skull in news reporters Elmo and Scuzzy. Professor Hart looked more like Albert Einstein and was programmed by Ryan's father. Some of this version persists to this day on copies of the official Power Rangers fan club video, where the CG Einstein version of Hart is still used, and of course you can watch it here on YouTube. VR Troopers was produced in a similar manner to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Borrow existing footage from Toei shows, recut, recast, redub, rebrand. In this case, Season 1 featured footage from two different shows, 1987's Superhuman Machine Metalda and 1986's Dimensional Warrior Spielbahn. The rainbow-colored superhero shows that Power Rangers were based on are part of a series called Super Sentai. That series had been running for almost 20 years at the time. Each year the series reboots, changes names, themes, narratives, costumes, actors, robots, and everything else. Each show produced around 50 episodes per year. While there was plenty of material to draw from, Saban needed something that was similar to Super Sentai, but visually distinct. Saban picked Metal Heroes. Metal Heroes, like Super Sentai, was a subgenre of tokusatsu programs on Japanese television. Tokusatsu roughly translates to special effects. It applies to all kinds of live-action shows from Godzilla to Ultraman to Super Sentai to Kamen Rider. Metal Heroes shows generally focus on a singular hero utilizing highly advanced technology in a Space Ranger military or police capacity. The series began in 1982 with Space Sheriff Gavan. It was followed in 1983 by Space Sheriff Sherivan, and in 1984 by Space Sheriff Scheider. Space Sheriff Scheider would actually be used as Ryan Steele's Season 2 suit, making it the oldest footage in active use for a Saban production at the time. When VR Troopers was being produced, Spielbahn and Metalda were already 7 and 8 years old respectively. Scheider footage would be a full decade, and it shows.
It's VR Troopers!
Steel, Caitlin Starr, J.B. Reese team up to battle the treacherous Darkheart. He attacks in the Skyborg jet, firing a mega missile.
Oh, brutal.
But he's no match for the troopers. Armored up, they soar in on the VR turbo cycle.
Totally virtual.
Team up with the troopers, Savon's VR Troopers, each sold separately.
VR Troopers episodes are cobbled together with lots of parts and pieces. The mission was to form one cohesive narrative about a team of heroes using newly shot scenes with American actors and settings, supplemented with action scenes from 3 different shows about individual heroes that never cross over from show to show on the Japanese end. Metalda provided Ryan's suit, Grimlord, and his throne room, as well as his named warriors, but Spielban had JB and Caitlin's battle suits, as well as several other evil minions, the generic Scug troops, and anything involving the sky-based shark cruisers, tanks, and fighter jets. It was a challenge, to say the least. See, there's a limited amount of footage for both shows involved in Season 1, and since Ryan's character never appears in any scenes with JB and Caitlin's characters in the original footage, it limits storytelling right out of the gate. Nearly every episode of VR Troopers is compelled to introduce a reason why the team must be split up, so it makes sense that they aren't in the same geographic location. And if they aren't split up, well then get ready for some fun. Time for me to put my State College Film Studies classes to work. I'm no Steven Spielban, but I know a thing or two about continuity in filmmaking. The goal is to make editing invisible to the audience. You don't want each cut from shot to shot, from scene to scene, to take the viewer out of the moment of the action. There are several ways that the locations of characters in a scene, their physical relationship to each other, the relationship to objects or key set pieces, and the overall clear understanding of the action in a scene can be clearly communicated to the viewer. The most common is the 180-degree rule. If 2 characters are talking to each other, one is on the left of the frame, the other is on the right of the frame, and you never switch positions, as if the camera is physically incapable of moving to the opposite angle. It would be confusing to the viewer. Did they actually do a dance move and hastily switch places? Why? Is something else going on out of frame that can't be seen that caused them to switch places? These aren't questions you want your viewer thinking about when they should be in the story. But what do you do when you don't actually have any footage of the characters in the scene together? It's a problem that exists even today in big budget movies like Captain America: Civil War. You either cut back and forth between shots that are close enough to be convincing, or you invent new material that will fit narratively even if it doesn't match visually. VR Troopers does both, and it can get very confusing. The result is inconsistent or confusing environments, a feeling of claustrophobia because the camera can't pull back to reorient the geography of the scene because there is no consistent geography, because no one is actually together. The VR Troopers production used a few other tricks. One, they had access to the suits, so there were times where they put the American actors in the suits and show them against a green screen, then superimpose them over whatever footage they needed in the background. It's not a great solution for long shots, but works on shorter shots. 2, shoot as much as you can out of the battle suits. 3, they created a new location called the Battle Grid. When they wanted the entire team to be in a fight together, they wore their special Battle Grid suits and met the enemies in a virtual environment that was basically just a soundstage with flashing lights, curtains, a smoke machine, and fake rocks. The Battle Grid and the Battle Grid suits are a necessary plot contrivance, yes, but they are also either the most insulting, desperate, cheap attempt to skirt around a problem that they created, or an absolute stroke of genius that pushes the show into the realm of genre self-critique, a deconstruction of what it means to be tokusatsu in America and our ability to suspend disbelief when we want to. Because I don't want to gloss over this. The Battle Grid suits are just repainted red Power Ranger helmets and spandex bodysuits with patterned fabric stuck to them, intended to invoke their regular cybernetic battle suits. It's the kind of thing that I can't be sure is making me angry or jealous. It's the kind of thing we could produce here, on this show, with our budget, that gives me hope that we're closer than we think to Hollywood legitimacy. Unlike Power Rangers, VR Troopers had the benefit of syndication, meaning it was sold to networks who chose to run it, where Power Rangers was broadcast on Fox Kids. This enabled VR Troopers to push the limits of violence more than Power Rangers, albeit violence applied to rubber suit monsters and robotic henchmen. VR Troopers featured Brad Hawkins as Ryan Steele. He would go on to voice the first Gold Ranger on Power Rangers Zeo a year after VR Troopers ended, and since then has kept himself busy with voice acting in games and a lot of redubbing Japanese animation. Caitlin was played by Sarah Brown, who also had a small role on Power Rangers Zeo before moving on to lots of other television and movie roles, including stints on General Hospital, Days of Our Lives, and As the World Turns. JB was played by Michael Hollander, who stepped away from acting to pursue a career as an animator for television, movie, and video games. Grimlord was played by Gardner Baldwin, Tao was played by Richard Rabago, Jeb the Dog was played by Zeb the Dog and voiced by Kerrigan Mahan, doing a very hammy Jack Nicholson impression. You might recognize Kerrigan as the same person who did the voice for Goldar on Power Rangers. VR Troopers music was composed and or produced by Shuki Levy, Ron Wasserman, Kusa Machi, and Jeremy Sweet, basically the same team that did the Power Rangers music. Shuki Levy also directed the first episode of the series. Like Matilda, Scheider, Spielbahn, and Power Rangers, one of the primary goals of VR Troopers was to sell toys. Kenner rolled out a full set of action figures and vehicles in multiple scales with a variety of action features. The basic line of figures stood roughly 5 to 6 inches in height with 4 or 5 points of articulation depending on the character design. Ryan, JB, and Caitlin in their battle suits. Ryan and JB had virtual armor versions with removable armor pieces. They were paired against Grimlord's lieutenants Tankotron, Air Striker, General Ivar, and Darkheart. The VR Troopers were equipped for battle with their battle cruiser, pursuit jet, turbo cycle, fighter bike, and Skyborg jet. And I don't want to gloss over this, but they also released super deluxe battle grid suit versions of Ryan, JB, and Caitlin, complete with their spandex bodysuits and repainted Power Ranger helmets. You have to respect the commitment to the bit. And hey, if those figures aren't good enough for you, keep in mind that every Matilda, Spielbahn, or Scheider figure that has ever been released is also a VR Troopers figure, even if it doesn't say so on the package. Just call it VR Troopers and absolutely no one will stop you. In 1995, Marvel Comics released 5 issues of a combined Power Rangers and VR Troopers series. Not that they were in the same stories together, but their stories were in the same books together. One cover on one side, the other cover on the other side. Just flip to the side you want facing out. Creators who worked on the books include legends like Carl Potts, Jimmy Palmiotti, and Fabian Nicieza. The series is not currently available in trades or on Comixology, so hit eBay or the long boxes if you want to read them. The UK audience via Phoenix Press was treated to a series of VR Troopers 3D comics. VR Troopers was featured on the Game Wizard, a handheld game system manufactured by Microgames of America. 3 titles: Ryan's Challenge, JB's Battle, and Jeb's Rescue. Sorry, Caitlin, it was you or the dog. The Game Wizard was basically a plastic shell that looked conspicuously like Nintendo's Game Boy, but with interchangeable LCD game cartridges reminiscent of Tiger handheld electronic games. Speaking of, Tiger Electronics released a handheld LCD game called VR Troopers When Worlds Collide. 1995 also saw the release of VR Troopers, published by Sega for the Genesis and Game Gear. The virtual fun didn't stop there. In 1994, Milton Bradley released a VR Troopers board game. McDonald's produced a series of 4 toys for their Happy Meals. There were puzzles and party supplies, a VR Troopers lawn sprinkler, trading cards, shirts, Christmas stockings, ornaments, and of course, Pogs, or fun caps, depending on where you're from. VR Troopers ran into the inevitable wall that all of these series will eventually face. There's no more footage from the original series to use. In fact, after just 2 seasons of stitching things together to form a new narrative, a lot of the fight scenes and explosions had already been used multiple times. Your only choices are: 1, use the same props and costumes and start shooting your own entirely original scenes. Expensive. 2, reboot with a new aesthetic, as Power Rangers has successfully done going on 28 years now. Or 3, cancel and move on to something else. After 92 episodes, that's what happened to VR Troopers. There was no more footage to utilize from Matilda, Spielbahn, or Scheider. Saban was producing other shows like Masked Rider and Big Bad Beetleborgs. The Power Rangers had a spectacular big-budget box office feature that, despite the reviews, was a financial success. Some episodes of VR Troopers were released on a series of VHS tapes. In October of 2012, Season 1, Volume 1 was released on DVD by Shout Factory. Season 1, Volume 2 followed in January of 2013. Season 2, Volume 1 hit in May of 2013, and then the rest of it was canceled due to low sales. Until January of 2014, when Season 2, Volume 2 was finally released. You can track those down if you want the security of physical media, or you can purchase them digitally through platforms like Prime Video, iTunes, or Apple TV. You could have watched it on Netflix, but it left in February of 2021. For the diehard fan, I recommend watching it on a browser on your favorite VR headset. There is no current reboot or continuation of VR Troopers. Saban was purchased by Disney. The Power Rangers franchise is owned by Hasbro. VR Troopers as a trademark, per the extent of our research, is currently showing as abandoned. If anyone could revive it at this point, it would likely be Hasbro's production studio, Allspark Entertainment, and while there does not appear to be any movement on that end, it is worth noting that some of the Metal Heroes characters have shown up in recent seasons of Power Rangers. As long as Hasbro has a financial stake in preventing any encroachment on their Power Rangers territory, they will continue to exert their legal rights to reinvent those characters in a proprietary manner to ensure that their Japanese history and identity is never known to American audiences. I may be taking this a little personally. I'm going to take 5, and then we'll do the close. Legend has it that after VR Troopers was canceled, the cast got together, shared some leisure enhancement beverages, and did a new voiceover track for a montage of scenes from the show. It is not intended for their normal child audience, and as far as I can tell, it's real and available here on YouTube. Fans have kept the legacy of VR Troopers alive, whether it's in the form of homemade virtualizer cosplay props or homage toy designs like Toy Pizza's Meta Ruda Rift Killer action figure. Technically, yes, a Matilda homage, but we covered this before. It counts. VR Troopers is the predictable result of the incredible success of Power Rangers, a show that brought the same energy, the same ingenuity, the same built-in aesthetic to an audience that was absolutely asking for it. More ninjas, more robots, more mutant monsters, more near-future speculative science fiction, more blinking console lights, more floating digital heads, more of everything. Turns out that even though the audience wanted more, there was a limit to how much more. Looking back now, from the future, the show that set the formula, that paved the way, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, was the only one that could transcend the generations. It's possible that somehow, someway, VR Troopers could have been the series to connect with the mainstream audience outside of Japan in a durable, lasting, financially profitable way. Perhaps if we can find the reality barrier, we can build a bridge from there to here, blend the two together from virtual reality to a mixed reality where the VR Troopers fight on. A visionary series imagining the battles of the future, foretelling the world of online conflict nearly 30 years ago. From some of the most influential television creators of all time comes a hero for our time, capable of defeating the worst evils given monstrous form that threatened the digital landscape, born from a behind-the-scenes grudge originating in the 70s. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad. Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, that's Syber with an S, is a 53-episode live-action television series originally broadcast in the United States from September of 1994 to April of 1995. It is one of the first series to draft on the wave of excitement created by the success of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the year before. Sam Collins is your average teenage rock and rollin' high schooler until one day he is suddenly blasted by a surge of electricity or something originating from his computer during a test run of a new music editing program. His bandmates Sydney and Tanker watch him disappear and then reappear across the room with a mysterious device strapped to his wrist. With much more pressing teenage matters like homework and phone calls, everyone just disregards the incident until it happens a second time, resulting in Sam's entrance into the virtual world within his computer. This time he's alone, but finds himself transformed into a giant armored superhero called Servo, facing off against a towering monster. Because meanwhile, another teenager named Malcolm Frink, in an attempt to get revenge on Sam, who likes the same girl that he likes, has joined forces with an evil artificial intelligence entity called Kilocon. Kilocon's name is a portmanteau of kilometric knowledge base animate human nullity. He's a former military program who calls humans meat things. Kilocon is software as a sentient, determined to destroy all of the security towers which give our world control over the digital realm. Why? Because he craves power, as much as possible, and then a little bit more on top of that. Kilocon needs Malcolm, an artist, to help design monsters which Kilocon will bring to life as megaviruses in the digital realm. The only thing standing between them and total domination of the emerging digital infrastructure around the world is Sam as Servo and his friends on the outside, who eventually join the fight on the inside as well. Servo can combine with other Arsenal programs controlled by his friends and bandmates Sydney, Tanker, and Amp to power up his armor into hybrid upgraded forms. Servo becomes Formo when combined with the Dragon-type program called Drago, and Synchro when combined with the humanoid mecha called Xenon. Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad was a production of Subaraya Productions, Ultracom Incorporated, DiC Productions, and Playmates Toys. Like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the year before, it is an adaptation, a localization of a TV show produced and broadcast in Japan called Denko Chojin Gridman, or Hyper Agent Gridman. Adaptation and localization are generous descriptions of the process. In this case, as with Power Rangers, little effort is made to directly translate the actual story or characters from the source material. Rather, the intent is to craft a new narrative around existing footage that contains characters covered in head-to-toe costumes that can be redubbed by new actors with ease, which in this case included Matthew Lawrence as Sam Collins and the Tim Curry as Kilo-Kan. Subaraya Productions, the company that created the iconic Japanese superhero Ultraman, created Hyper Agent Gridman for Japanese television, where it ran from April of 1993 to January of 1994. It was ideal for repurposing on US television or any other international market, given the virtual realm where the majority of the fight scenes take place. Even Power Rangers had to contend with external fight footage in geographic locations that weren't consistent with architecture and signage in the West. Originally 39 episodes in Japan, Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad was able to stretch Gridman into 53 episodes, which resulted in footage including monster fights being used more than once. In Gridman, the main character, Naoto, merges with Gridman in the virtual world as opposed to Sam, who becomes Servo, a subtle but important difference. Ultracom Incorporated was the international licensing arm of Subaraya Productions, including Gridman. Playmates Toys paid for the series in the US as well as the acquisition of the toy license, because just like in Japan, the whole show was designed to sell toys. Along with DiC and Pangea Corporation, Playmates redeveloped and renamed the characters to suit their US retail needs. DiC handled the writing and production of the live-action footage that would need to be created to fill the gaps between monster fights. DiC saw what Saban had done with Power Rangers, how easy it was, how inexpensive, how profitable it was to create a show out of a show that already existed. DiC grabbed a Japanese license as fast as they could to beat Saban at his own game and do it cheaper. But Saban wasn't stopping at Power Rangers. Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad would be competing not only with the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but another Saban production, VR Troopers. Premiering the same month, made the same way from existing Japanese television shows Superhuman Machine Metalder, Dimensional Warrior Spielbahn, and Space Sheriff Scheider, DiC and Saban were going head-to-head in a corporate grudge match that dated back to the 80s. One of the writers on Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad believes that DiC specifically got into production to spite Saban Productions founder Haim Saban. Beyond the similarity in the production techniques of the show, the original name for the show, Power Boy, had to be changed when it was found to be too similar to Power Rangers. The main character, Zach Jason, had to be changed to Sam Collins when it was clearly too similar to Zach and Jason, the Black and Red Power Rangers, respectively. Those aren't coincidental similarities. They are intentional shots taken in an attempt to skirt legalities and capitalize on or dilute Saban's success. This is bad blood that runs deep.
Crash into the digital world. Megavirus monsters are clobbering Servo! It's Vitor, Tracto, and Boar! Just in time! Quick! Samurais into Xenon! Jam and Torb combine cyber powers as Samurais into Drago! You picked the wrong guys to mess with, you Megavirus maniacs! Deluxe Servo, Deluxe Drago, and Deluxe Xenon! Samurais, for your protection! Superhuman Samurai! Cyber Squad!
DiC Audiovisual was founded in 1971 by Jean Chalopin as a production division of Radio Luxembourg in France. In 1980, Saban visited DiC's offices and cut a deal with them. Saban and Shuki Levy would compose all the music DiC wanted for free in exchange for the publishing rights to the music. The same lucrative deal Saban would make with other television producers in the years to come. In 1982, DiC established a US operation led by Andy Hayward to translate DiC's productions into English for broadcast in the US. After successes like Inspector Gadget and The Littles from 1983 to 1985, Hayward moved to exert more power within the company. In 1986, Hayward, along with Bear Stearns and Prudential Insurance, executed a leveraged buyout of Jean Chalopin and Radio Luxembourg to the tune of $70 million. Andy Hayward, Bear Stearns, and Prudential ended up with majority ownership of DiC. After the hostile takeover, Chalopin sold the rest of his shares and left to create a new company called Créativité et Développement. The seeds of conflict had been planted. The next round would begin immediately. Burdened with debt after the takeover, Andy Hayward looked to sell off DiC assets to raise cash. Saban approached him with an interest in purchasing the international rights to the DiC library. Haim Saban had a secret investor that he was going to sell those DiC rights to if DiC would first sell to him. DiC sold, and Saban immediately flipped his rights to his secret investor, Jean Chalopin. Hayward felt betrayed. Hayward would never have sold the rights to Saban if he had known he was going to sell them back to Chalopin. Saban thought it was just business and walked away with a handsome profit. DiC and Saban Productions, through their musical agreements and other deals over the years, were heavily intertwined. In 1991, DiC sued Saban for damages related to the sales of the rights to Chalopin. Hayward wanted nothing to do with Saban going forward. Ultimately, the two parties settled out of court. It would be a decade before they spoke again. But the resentment on both sides would continue to burn up to and including the run of Superhuman Samurai Syber Squad, a show that was created as a virtual you from one television power executive to another, but also to sell toys. Playmates licensed, imported, and rebranded a whole slew of Superhuman Samurai Syber Squad toys, from non-posable PVC minifigures of Servo, Drago, Xenon, and select kaiju to highly articulated 9-inch figures packed with accessories. There were deluxe transforming versions of Drago and Xenon that can combine with the 9-inch versions of Servo to recreate the Formo and Synchro variations, an assortment of 5-inch versions of Servo, Drago, Xenon, and select kaiju, as well as Kilokon himself. There were full-size roleplay toys like the Digital Communicator, the Dragon Cannon, and the Samurai Sync Sword, and nothing for the human characters created by DiC, because that wasn't the point. New sculpts, new paint, new molds, all of that would have taken too much time and too much money to get to market for the single-season run of the show. Superhuman Samurai Syber Squad was licensed out for all the things: watches, shirts, costumes, storybooks, coloring books, activity books, posters, bubble bath, party supplies, and of course, red-hot pogs. Or fun caps, depending on where you're from. Despite its respectable performance, Superhuman Samurai Syber Squad would only last a single season, but would return, sort of, 20 years later, or at least his Japanese counterpart, Gridman, would. Studio Trigger and Tsuburaya Productions brought Gridman back in a 2015 short called Denko Chojin Gridman, Boys Invent Great Hero. It follows one of the original characters from Gridman as he returns once again to fight against the evil Khan Digifier, aka Kilokon, in Superhuman Samurai Syber Squad. The short was shown at Japan Animator Expo and resulted in a 12-episode series just 3 years later in 2018 called SSSS Gridman. The 4 S's a nod to the US version of the franchise, and before you ask, yes, it does kick off the new Gridman shared universe. SSSS Dynazenon is slated to hit Japanese television in 2021. In 1995, a few international markets were lucky enough to get the Superhuman Samurai Syber Squad soundtrack on CD. That same year, Buena Vista Home Video released 6 episodes on VHS. Years later, in 2013, Mill Creek Entertainment released the entire series on DVD. Many of the episodes are available in varying degrees of quality and legality here on YouTube. SSSS Gridman was picked up to be aired as an English dub on Cartoon Network as part of their Adult Swim lineup in January of 2021. Surely SSSS Dynazenon and whatever else gets rolled into the Gridman cinematic universe won't be far behind. In 1996, shortly after Superhuman Samurai Syber Squad ended its only season, Disney purchased DiC basically by accident when they were purchasing ABC. That same year, Jean Chalopin sold the DiC International Library rights to Fox Kids, a company created by the merger of Fox Children's Network and Saban Entertainment. Chalopin's Créativité et Développement was officially absorbed into Fox Kids as well. And then, funny story, in 2000, Andy Hayward, backed by Bain Capital and Chase Capital Partners, bought DiC back from Disney. Shortly thereafter, in 2004, Hayward bought out Bain Capital and took DiC public. And finally, in 2006, after 20 years, DiC, led by Andy Hayward, bought back the international rights to 20 of DiC's shows from Disney. The same rights that Hayward sold to Saban, that Saban sold to Chalopin in 1986. Disney owned the rights after their 2001 purchase of Saban Entertainment. Legend has it that when all of the fights were over, when the rights were settled, after the money cleared the banks, Hayward's mother, sadly, passed away. Saban reached out to him and attempted reconciliation over tacos. At long last, they had found peace, together through the insatiable hunger of corporate acquisitions and bitter, ruthless fiduciary machinations. Just two star-crossed, mega-powerful television executives, friends, sailing the Mediterranean Sea, spending the holidays together in Acapulco on Saban's yacht. A movie based on a popular toy line is a rite of passage for every generation of kids, and for the executives in charge of maintaining that brand. Refresh all the consumables so the sales cycle can continue while giving kids a taste of the real world as they watch their heroes achieve modern artistic legitimacy that simultaneously destroys their childhood. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, was released on June 30th, 1995, just 2 years after the premiere of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers television show on Fox Kids in the US. The movie served as a transition not only for the narrative of the story in their world, but also for the brand in our world. From a franchise with box office aspirations to a franchise with box office regrets. Angel Grove, a bustling California metropolis, is home to Earth's most powerful superheroes, the Power Rangers. 6 teenagers handpicked by the noble Zordon for their talents, their compassion, and most importantly, their attitude. It is in this otherwise normal city that an ancient artifact is accidentally unearthed by construction workers, a giant foreboding egg that is immediately hatched by regular series villains Rita Repulsa and Lord Zed. A new nemesis, Ivan Ooze, is released from a 6,000-year imprisonment, having been trapped there by the same Zordon responsible for the creation of the Power Rangers. With revenge at the top of his list, Ivan replaces Lord Zed and Rita as top bad guy, accomplishing precisely what they had not been able to accomplish in the years before. Destroy the Power Rangers Command Center, defeat Zordon, take away the Rangers' powers, and cast them deep into space. Now the Power Rangers must take on a new adventure, travel to a strange new world, meet new people, and fight monsters to acquire an even greater power. Time is running out to defeat Ivan Ooze, to save Zordon, to save Angel Grove, to save the world. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers first aired in August of 1993, produced by Saban Entertainment for Fox Kids Television. It utilized a familiar process, licensing a previously existing Japanese television series, then taking steps to localize it for broadcast in the US as though it were a wholly original production. Using action scenes from the 1992 Toei Super Sentai series Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger intercut with original footage featuring American actors and all new storylines, Saban and Fox scored a huge hit that moved billions of dollars in merchandise. After running out of Zyuranger footage, Saban headed back to the well for Season 2 to get more action scenes, robots, monsters, and costumes from subsequent seasons of Super Sentai. Season 2 in 1994 replaced the Green Ranger and Zords from Zyuranger with the White Ranger and Zords from 1993's Gosei Sentai Dairanger. This would become an annual process, as it had been in Japan since the late 70s, with each season resetting the themes and aesthetic of the narrative with the ultimate intent of driving more toy sales. Season 3 would do the same for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but this time that transition would take place at the movies instead of on television. The Power Rangers franchise had completely reshaped the children's television and merchandise market in just 2 years. It was time to see if that power could expand to the theater. The feature film was also a bold attempt by Saban to take an even greater degree of control over the Power Rangers franchise by creating the entire thing from scratch. No borrowed Toei footage, further establishing the Power Rangers as a unique American entity independent of Toei's Zyuranger, costume and robot designs notwithstanding. A feature film seems like an obvious next step for a television franchise that was already so successful. But the problem started before a script was in hand. In a move that would have lasting implications for the series and the movie, Saban had taken the unusual cost-cutting measure of producing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers from the beginning as a non-union show. This meant that it was cheaper to produce from a budgetary standpoint, but it also meant little protection and little pay for the cast. Some actors have said they were paid as little as minimum wage at the time and could have made more money working at McDonald's. 3 of the 5 original Rangers, Austin St. John as Red Ranger Jason, Tui Trang as Yellow Ranger Trini, and Walter Jones as Black Ranger Zach, decided that they weren't going to continue to be a part of the series without a renegotiated contract. Preferably one that included fair pay and more, considering that a feature film was going to be added to the production schedule. Their characters were written out of the series, and Saban was forced to recast for the TV series and subsequently the movie. Production officially began in 1994. On the day the new Rangers were cast, Steve Cardenas as the Red Ranger, Karen Ashley as the Yellow Ranger, and Johnny Young Bosch as the Black Ranger. They were told that they were also going to be appearing in the new movie that was going to start shooting immediately in Australia. Saban Entertainment, in conjunction with 20th Century Fox, enlisted producer Suzanne Todd and a team of writers to begin figuring out what a Power Rangers feature film would look like. Writer Arn Olson, who had developed a reputation for writing children's movies, submitted a pitch that they liked and wanted to build on. With his Power Rangers in Space concept, he wrote a script that was ultimately passed over by Fox in favor of a script written by John Camps, which introduced the new villain Ivan Ooze. That said, elements from both drafts would make the final version, as Olson was brought back to clean up and smooth out the actual shooting script. The most important part of the script was that it reaches out beyond the expected characters and story of the show, and there are several obvious reasons for this. 1. New villains and new worlds means that you can do whatever you want with them. Set them up, tear them down, kill them all. Whatever happens to them can stay in the movie whether it gets referred to again or not. 2. Sell the toys. New characters, new villains, new weapons, new hero gear. That's what this is all about. New stuff, new toys, new bed sheets, new Tiger Electronics handheld games. Power Rangers, by the nature of its creation, was a Frankensteined entity made of parts and pieces of different productions. Scripts being written over previously existing footage, trying to make disparate elements seem like their juxtaposition was intentional. Over time, a narrative developed. More as a result of the limitations of the ingredients rather than a recipe set about from the beginning. There's nothing wrong with that per se. However, in this case, the impact on the movie was the extra degree of restriction it put on the production of the film, again, before it even had a script. Olson wasn't given much of a choice but to introduce new characters and limit the development of the Rangers themselves because the television series was decreed to be the priority. Olson couldn't do anything that might conflict with the narrative that had already been written and shot for the series. Meanwhile, Steve Wang was initially recruited to direct. Wang had just directed Guyver Dark Hero, a movie that had a lot in common with the film they were looking to make, a Japanese comic book superhero wearing bio armor that looked like he could be a Power Rangers villain. Wang didn't stick around long, though, and was replaced by Brian Spicer, who wasn't technically working on his first film, but was going to be directing his first film. Spicer had plenty of television directing experience under his belt, including 21 episodes of Parker Lewis Can't Lose. Spicer had never technically watched Power Rangers, not that that was a requirement for directing a movie about them, but to be safe, Spicer did binge watch every episode up to that point to make sure that he had a feel for the aesthetics, the narrative movements, the mise-en-scène. Spicer wanted to bring a higher degree of emotion to his film. He wanted to be able to see the actors' faces as they ninja kicked a giant Birdman so hard it turns into a puddle of purple goo, which was good because the costume department was preparing a version of the suits with retractable visors and mouth plates that usually block the actors' face acting. Beyond the new helmets, the new suits were designed with a more substantial armored appearance. All the extra padding made them 30 to 40 pounds heavier than their television counterparts. After an initial round of shooting, Spicer and the rest of the production recognized just how terrible the helmets looked without their visors and mouth plates, how much more difficult it actually made the continuity between actors and stunt people, and decided that the best move was to go ahead and reshoot everything they had already shot. The story called for the Power Rangers to leave Earth in search of a great power more powerful than the power that they already had as the Power Rangers. The quest brought them to the planet Phaedos, where they meet up with Dulcea, a great warrior from the tribe that helped battle against Ivan Ooze, imprisoning him in the egg so many years ago. Gabriella Fitzpatrick was cast as Dulcea. After an initial round of shooting, she was diagnosed with an ovarian cyst, something that caused her such extreme pain that she couldn't perform the role. And if you've ever seen the costume, it's not that easy to just swap in a stunt performer. So the part was recast with Mariska Hargitay, who you know today as Detective Olivia Benson on Law & Order SVU. Spicer and company decided that the best move was to go ahead and reshoot everything they had already shot involving Fitzpatrick as Dulcea. And look, movie making is a special thing. It can be magical when all the pieces come together, when everything meshes. They say you make a movie 3 times. Once in the writing, once in the shooting, and once in the editing. The crew of Power Rangers wanted to see if they could beat that record.
has a gift. Each has a power. Each has a purpose. And together, they will face their greatest adventure. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. The power is on. Next summer.
The shoot that was supposed to run from October to December was up against its deadline. The production had been so delayed that they were not only going to have to stay in Australia past the holidays, but they were going to have to shoot some of the regular TV series in Australia, so that production didn't get behind schedule as well. That said, when they looked at the footage of Mariska Hargitay as Dulcea, a capable and brilliant actor, it just wasn't quite right. And as it turns out, Fitzpatrick had recovered over the holiday break and was available again, so Spicer and company decided that the best move was to go ahead and reshoot everything they had already shot with Mariska Hargitay as Dulcea, again with Fitzpatrick as Dulcea. As important as Dulcea is in the final film, helping the Power Rangers acquire the great power and thereby their new suits and Zords, saving Zordon, Angel Grove, and the world, she had a much bigger role in the original script. A more robust backstory, training montages, all kinds of stuff, so it makes sense that they wanted to get it right. It's only in hindsight that we can look at it and say that maybe there was a better way to have handled it. We are from the future, where everything seems obvious. The cast found themselves shooting the movie and the TV series at the same time, working around a series of production issues that could have broken the spirit of the entire team. Anthropomorphic rat creatures whose costumes were too simple for the final production had to be replaced with more complex monsters. Scenes that were added after the fact, and after Olsen, the original writer, had already moved on from the film. Ivan Ooze being changed midstream from a character whose main selling point was that he was a shapeshifter to just being a guy who played a spectrum of personalities, like a purple Robin Williams or a Tokusatsu Jim Carrey. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie goes right for every 10-year-old kid's jugular, opening with a scene depicting the Power Rangers sky surfing because it's 1995 and the assumption was that everyone was going to be sky surfing in the future. It was going to change sports and redefine relationships. But it doesn't stop there. The sky surfing seamlessly transitions into inline skating, and the best any kid can do from there is just hold on, because it's a roller coaster of character introductions, monster makeovers, new Ranger powers, and all the cutting-edge, computer-generated morphing the budget would allow. From Ivan himself to the Tengu warriors to the Temple Guardians on Phaedos. Presumably one of the benefits of theming everything around Ooze was to take advantage of that morphing technology. That's the name of the thing. This movie should be constantly morphing mightily. That said, the CG on the giant monsters and the new Ninja Megazords looks like early animatics that were never finished. And I'm saying that as someone who sat in the theater and watched it on the day of release. The final Megazord isn't even on model. It doesn't match the toy or the show version from Kaku Ranger. Hard to know if this uber chrome low detail look is what they were intending or if they just ran out of money and time. Hard to know if practical visual effects might have fared better given that there is a scene where the Rangers fight a dragon skeleton accomplished with practical visual effects that looks better than all the CG combined. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie was released on June 30th, 1995. It made over $66 million worldwide against a budget of $15 million, which basic math would suggest was a success. It did make money, quite a bit of money. Reviews were mixed, with critics on both sides thinking of the children when it came to their reviews. Some said that it was fine. After all, it was just a kid's movie about toys. Others said it was terrible cinema. It's for kids who imagine that this is what it's like to be a cool teenager or a hip young adult, with a positive message that, no matter how extreme the activity, it's never too extreme to wear proper safety protection. Remember, kids, the first thing a hero protects is their knees and elbows. Up against movies like Disney's Pocahontas, Warner Bros.' Batman Forever, and Universal's Apollo 13, it came in fourth, making only $17 million its first weekend. Some saw it as a sign that the power of the Power Rangers was on the decline. Others saw it as a reflection of a production that didn't know what it was doing from the start. Saban and Fox saw it as a missed opportunity to do more creatively, to make more financially. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, the soundtrack has the power to satisfy a range of musical tastes. From the Red Hot Chili Peppers to Van Halen to Dan Hartman to Snaps, I Got the Power. There's something here for everyone. Like a 90s time capsule trapped in a giant egg for nearly 30 years. A lot of the merchandise released for Power Rangers the movie was previously existing merchandise with the Power Rangers the movie logo slapped on it. There were some original releases like the 8-inch scale Ivan Ooze and his two evil space aliens Scorpitan and Hornitor. Previously existing figures like the 5-inch Automorph and Head Flippin' Quick Change figures were re-released with modified sculpts that removed the Head Flippin' feature. Re-releases of these superposable 8-inch figures all cast in CG like chrome. The Rangers' new giant combining robot, the Ninja Megazord, and Tommy's Falcon Zord were both released in the movie-branded boxes, as well as non-posable collectible minifigures, a 2-pack of the pink and yellow Power Rangers girls with interchangeable outfits and hair that you can style. Finish the collection with the carrying case playset. McDonald's featured a Happy Meal promotional tie-in with 4-inch scale figures and vehicles with the Rangers and their new Ninja Zords. 7-Up ran a contest with 1,000 Power Rangers movie power packs with over $500 in new merchandise. $500? Jell-O featured the Rangers on their packaging. Fleer released a series of trading cards, and there was even a thing called an Ivan Ooze knuckle extruder. One push and Ivan's head oozes globs of grossness. Hey, don't blame me, I just work here. More recently, Hasbro, the current owner of the Power Rangers franchise, has released Tenga Warriors and the Rangers in their ninja outfits, featured both in the movie and Season 3. Sega Genesis, Game Gear, Super Nintendo, and Game Boy all got their own different versions of games based on the movie, loosely following the events of Season 2 and the film itself. None of them are ports of each other, so collect them all. Marvel Comics published 2 different books based on the film, a story adaptation and a photo comic book in September of 1995. Only 2 alternate covers on the regular comic version. It was 1995, so be thankful that it wasn't worse than that. The movie came home to VHS and Laserdisc in 1995. It would get a re-release on DVD in 2001, then again in 2003, new packaging in 2011, and then again in 2017 to coincide with the release of the newest Power Rangers movie called Power Rangers. In 2018, Shout Factory released it on Blu-ray for the first time as part of their 25th anniversary Mighty Morphin Power Rangers The Series DVD Steelbook box set. In 2019, they released it on Blu-ray again, this time by itself. As of this video, it is available to stream on HBO Max and varying levels of quality on YouTube. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie was fraught with problems and regrets, but it was by no means the end of the franchise, rather something they could build on, lessons to learn from. 2 years later, the Rangers were back in theaters with another season-transitioning film taking place between 1996's Power Rangers Zeo and 1997's Power Rangers Turbo. Directed by David Winning, written by Shuki Levy and Shel Danielson, produced by Saban Entertainment and Toei Company, distributed by 20th Century Fox. It is the second installment in the Power Rangers feature film library, but it is not a sequel to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie. That's not how this works. I will explain. See, there were 2 seasons of shows between the 2 movies, so a lot has happened since the first movie for it to be a direct sequel. And the question must be asked with respect to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, is it canon? No! The events of Season 3, which began airing immediately after the movie, tells a completely different origin story for the Rangers' Ninja Mega Powers and Ninja Megazords. In the TV version, the Season 2 Thunder Megazords are destroyed by Rita Repulsa's brother, Rito Revolto. The Rangers are sent to the Desert of Despair by Zordon, where they meet Ninjor, who gives them their new powers and Zords. No Dulcia, no Ivan Ooze, the movie could have been considered part of the continuity between June 30th, 1995, the day it was released, and September 2nd, 1995, the day the first episode of Season 3 aired, beginning the new timeline. By the time Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, hit theaters in March of 1997, the events of the first movie have been completely erased. In 2017, a third Power Rangers movie was released, simply called Power Rangers. It didn't even attempt to be part of any established continuity of Power Rangers. It was a full franchise reboot. A new origin story with new designs, new attitudes, and a PG-13 rating. Probably because of all of the violence and that part at the beginning where the Red Ranger j***ed off a bull. It absolutely bombed in theaters, making only $142 million worldwide against a budget of $105 million. But there's still hope for the franchise at the box office, as a 4th film is currently in development by Paramount Pictures, Entertainment One, and Netflix. Hopefully this time without jerking off any animals. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie made plenty of money. It didn't tank the franchise, which is still going on right now. If things had gone smoother, maybe they make some more money in 1995, maybe they get a few more movies out of it. Either way, an entire generation of kids grew up loving it and the decades of Power Rangers adventures that followed. More than anything, it reflected the love of the franchise just 2 years in, here in the US and all the way on the other side of the world in Australia. Power Rangers in a very short time conquered the pop culture world, changed the toy industry, and established a foundation that would last for decades to come. The formula was so simple and had already been proven to work, success was virtually guaranteed, especially with a performance-enhancing boost from the show that established the formula in the first place. But the results prove that the only way to come out with a product that's less than half as good as the original is to produce a show that's twice as bad as everything that came before it. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Masked Rider. Masked Rider is a 40-episode live-action television series that originally aired in the United States from September of 1995 to August of 1996. It attempted to transform a Japanese action television icon into a cringe-worthy sitcom for American kids, and I am here to tell you that it did not work. Masked Rider is Prince Dex from the planet Edenoi, what's left of it anyway, a far-off desolate world where his uncle Count Dragon holds the populace in his evil grip. Prince Dex's grandfather, the rightful King Lexian, is at the end of his rope looking for a way to defeat Count Dragon and liberate the planet. Count Dragon is expanding his empire and has Earth in his sights as a source of new bodies to convert into soldiers for his army. King Lexian decides to send Dex, the keeper of the power of Masked Rider, as is his birthright, to Earth to protect the planet from the attack by Count Dragon. Dex leaves behind his grandfather, his rebel friends, and his pet, or friend, or Alf, or whatever, named Ferbus. And that is when things get weird. Dex is blasted light years across space inside a flaming comet, cratering the yard of a suburban family on Earth who have an affinity for orphans and space for one more. They take him in, probably because he's wearing 90s cool guy clothes, and make him part of their family with little concern as to who he is, where he came from, how he got there, or what about the crater in the front yard. They buy into Dex's story, and soon after, Ferbus shows up to make sure that this show's cast is ripe for sitcom hijinks. What'll Ferbus do next? Eat a pie? Steal a car? Rap? You'll have to tune in to find out. It's the 90s, so anything is possible. Dex and Ferbus's adopted family, the Stewarts, are quirky and fun from Dad Hal to Mom Barbara, daughter Molly to son Albie. There's plenty of love in this house, and what is this show about again? Oh right, the insectivore army from space, here to enslave humanity in a war across the galaxy. Dex, along with the help of his new Earth family, will do everything he can to defeat the insectivore army and ultimately his uncle Count Dragon. Along the way, he's going to make a lot of friends, learn some very special lessons, and become part of a family that loves him for exactly who he is. And also his pet platypus man, Ferbus. Masked Rider was created by Saban and Shuki Levy. Like the wildly successful Power Rangers before, it is the product of a previously existing Japanese television series, thoroughly deconstructed, then rebuilt as something else entirely. This one even more so. On the surface, there are similarities to the source material. In substance, only ghosts. In 1993, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers became one of the most popular and most lucrative television shows ever. It was responsible for over $1 billion in merchandise sales in the first year, accounting for 40% of the action figure market by 1995. Power Rangers creator Saban was no dummy. You have that kind of success on your hands, you do whatever you need to do to copy and paste and paste and paste and paste and paste and paste. And at the time, there were 3 major subgenres of live-action special effects shows, or Tokusatsu, in Japan. Super Sentai are the multicolored superheroes like Power Rangers. Metal Heroes are the cyborg police or military-focused shows that Saban used for VR Troopers, another series headed for season 2. The third subgenre was Kamen Rider, which literally translates to Masked Rider. Kamen Rider as a subgenre began in 1971 with the series Kamen Rider, created by Shotaro Ishinomori. By 1989, there had been 9 different Kamen Rider series of varying popularity. In general, Kamen Rider shows have at least one superhero character dressed in an insect-stylized costume that rides a motorcycle. They have a rider belt that facilitates the transformation into their respective rider form. They are super strong and proficient martial artists, with finishing moves like a rider kick to devastate their opponents. While Super Sentai had been a relatively steady, reasonably predictable, and profitable series for producers Toei, Metal Heroes and Kamen Rider had their ups and downs. Kamen Rider Black, which ran from 1987 to 1988, was the first series after a 6-year hiatus. It did well enough to spawn a direct sequel called Kamen Rider Black RX in 1989. When it came time for Saban to partner with Toei for another new series, it made sense to pursue the third point of the Toei television action trinity, even if the most recent footage that Saban could use was from a show that, in 1995, was 6 years old. With Power Rangers still surging on television and on the toy shelves, Saban facilitated a 3-part crossover that would act as a backdoor pilot for Masked Rider. What better way to start the new franchise than teaming him up with the already popular and successful Rangers, who could introduce him to their fans and send him on his way already well ahead of the game. Within the Saban shared universe, Prince Dex is from the planet Edenoi, which just so happens to be the same planet that Alpha 5, the Power Rangers' robotic assistant, is from. Alpha 5, who helped Zordon create and recruit the Power Rangers themselves. Alpha 5, who was created by Prince Dex's grandfather, King Lexian. The three-parter titled A Friend in Need aired in the 3 weeks prior to Masked Rider's launch in September of 1995. You can't blame viewers for expecting a show like Power Rangers, being surprised when they got a show that was like Alf, but without the clever writing and action scenes that didn't even maintain their own internal consistency. In Japan, the Kamen Rider series tends to show even less of the costumed heroes than Super Sentai or Metal Heroes. There is, therefore, less footage to pull from, and thereby required Saban to fill more time with non-costumed actors and Ferbus hijinks than any potential fan could tolerate. On top of that, Masked Rider in Japan is a much darker show overall. There's a lot of body horror and intense imagery, so a limited sample of usable footage got even smaller. Masked Rider in the US was forced to cobble together footage from Kamen Rider Black RX, Kamen Rider ZO, a movie released in Japan in 1993, and Kamen Rider J, a movie released in Japan in 1994. In the very first fight Dex has with a creature called Destructosphere, it is clear from several shots that the rider fighting Destructosphere isn't wearing the same suit as Dex, because Dex's suit is from Kamen Rider Black RX, and Destructosphere is a creature called Doros from Kamen Rider ZO. Because Saban wasn't able to get all of the suits, they would need to create new footage of shots or angles or entirely new scenes, because Kamen Rider Black RX was 6 years old. Most of that stuff is gone. Nearly all of the monster troops were designs created new for Masked Rider in the US. Once Masked Rider was on, it didn't take viewers long to realize that the Power Rangers never show up and are never mentioned. Not unheard of for television spin-offs, but disappointing nonetheless. Ferbus was no substitute for Tommy Oliver.
Count Dragon and his legion of mutant marauders seek to enslave Earth. Who will save us? Masked Rider. Masked Rider, the powerful and awesome teenage hero from outer space with his incredible battle cycle, the Combat Chopper. And when he transforms into Masked Rider Super Gold, not even the evil Cyclopter can stand in his way for long. Masked Rider from Bandai.
So, let's talk about the man-bear duck in the room. Let's talk about Ferbus. Ferbus is a unique creation for the Saban version of Masked Rider. Wikipedia describes him as a furry bipedal alien with a beak and looks similar to a Furby. Furbies were produced by Tiger Electronics and didn't hit the market until 1998, 2 years after Masked Rider had been off the air. There is no legal proof that the two are connected or that one inspired the other. It is possibly a case of simultaneous invention. Who among us prior to 1995 hadn't had a nightmare about something that looked like that? In fact, I have my own proprietary creation with similar looking characters called Duck Bears that I've been shopping around to studios since 1995. Yes, it looks kind of like DuckTales, but we just went over this. It's a simultaneous invention. See, DuckTales is about talking ducks in a city called Duckburg. Duck Bears is about talking platypuses exploring the galaxy in their spaceship, the Platter Prize. There are bound to be similarities. In an oversaturated genre like this, it's unavoidable. Within the world created by the narrative, Ferbus is a member of an alien species called Monotomanax. In our world, Ferbus is a puppet costume created by Chiodo Brothers Productions, who created the Critters in the Critters series of films, among other things. First try.
Close enough.
Whatever. Also, sometimes a suit worn by suit actor Vern Troyer, Mini-Me in the Austin Powers series, voiced by Paul Pistori, who did multiple voices for Kevin Rubio's Troops Star Wars short in 1997. Ferbus, in and of himself, is neither offensive nor necessarily out of place within this already exaggerated depiction of reality. It's actually a pretty well done puppet and suit character with functional expressions. He's as good as Alf or any of the Ewoks. The problem is the degree to which it turns the show into something that the audience was not expecting and statistically did not want. Like Power Rangers before it, Masked Rider had a full complement of toys from Bandai. Minifigures, 6-inch posable figures, motorcycles, vehicles, ecto-accelerating or head-flipping or quick change, whatever you want to call it. Dash racers, mutating vehicles, regular decks, Masked Rider in his regular and upgraded Super Gold and Super Blue forms, villains like Cyclopter, Skull Reaper, Robosect, Double Face, and Count Dragon, and of course, Ferbus. When Masked Rider ran in syndication in 1996, KFC included Masked Rider toys in their kids' meals, a Masked Rider figure that you can change into his Super Gold form with a tiny helmet, his Super Chopper motorcycle, Magno the supercar, an Ecto Viewer wristband, Cyclopter, and Bump and Go Ferbus. Lunchboxes, party supplies, costumes, Marvel Comics did a single issue that brought Masked Rider and the Power Rangers back together again to defend the city against the forces of Count Dragon. A few episodes of Masked Rider were released on VHS in 1996. In the UK, Jetix released a DVD with 3 episodes. In 2012, Shout Factory announced a distribution deal with Saban, which includes rights to the first 17 seasons of Power Rangers, VR Troopers, Big Bad Beetleborgs, and Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation. It did not include Masked Rider. It is not currently officially available for streaming online. That said, all 40 episodes are here on YouTube unofficially. Why isn't it streaming? Shinichi Moriyasu, former president of Bandai, said the show was a sales failure. Didn't move enough toys, didn't attract enough eyeballs, didn't even run the full series before it got canceled. Perhaps some of the blame can go to the oversaturation of the market. By 1996, the genre had already produced 3 seasons of Power Rangers, a Power Rangers movie, Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, 2 seasons of VR Troopers, Big Bad Beetleborgs, and then this tonally bifurcated psychological experiment with more screen time given to the man-bear duck than the title character. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's what it feels like. Ultimately, Toei and Ishimori Productions, the company that handles the rights to creator Shotaro Ishinomori's creation since his death in 1998, declined to renew Saban's license to Kamen Rider. There are whispers that Ishinomori himself banned Saban from ever using the property again because it was so badly executed. Some stories even say that Toei took legal action against Saban for the damage to the brand internationally. Either way, in 2001, Saban Entertainment was purchased by Disney as part of the Fox Family Worldwide, Fox Kids Worldwide deal. Properties like Power Rangers and Masked Rider were included in that purchase. In 2010, Saban bought the rights back from Disney, and then in 2018, sold everything to Hasbro. As of this video, it appears that Hasbro owns the actual Masked Rider episodes, but not the license to do anything with them, unless they want to write a very, very large check to Toei and Ishimori Productions, which they don't. And that might not matter anyway, because Kamen Rider is preparing for a big multimedia push in Japan intended to make the world tour the same way Godzilla has in the last few years. In July of 2021, Toei announced that a new film called Shin Kamen Rider was in production, with Evangelion creator Anno Hideaki at the helm, due out in March 2023. Hideaki wrote the script and co-directed the 2016 film Shin Godzilla, which effectively reconceptualized the well-tread Godzilla narrative. The hope is to do the same thing for Kamen Rider, bring the 50-year-old concept simultaneously back to its roots while propelling it around the world and into the future. In the finale of Saban's Masked Rider, which aired before the last 3 episodes, Dex recognizes that he is not strong enough to defeat the end boss monster, Bruticon, so he teams up with the 10 previous Masked Rider warriors who quickly run through a training exercise before joining him on the battlefield. It is the perfect illustration of everything that did not work for Masked Rider as a series. Confusing editing that loses track of the direction of action, the position of characters and the location, voice acting that, to me, sounds like one guy doing the only 3 voices he knows how to do. Random Japanese actors that show up in a group shot that aren't there a moment later, group shots that are clearly the Japanese actor Tetsuo Kurata playing Kotaro Minami and not Ted Jan Roberts playing Prince Dex, even though they're wearing the same clothes and have the same haircut. The footage of the Rider Warriors is pulled from 2 3-part arcs in Kamen Rider Black RX. For Japanese fans, it's a celebration of the long history of the franchise, an all-star moment when you get to see 30 years of heroes who aren't even really from the same dimension working together on screen at the same time. Saban's Masked Rider couldn't even keep the names matched to the characters on screen. During their roll call, Kamen Rider Super 1 calls himself Strongman, Kamen Rider Stronger calls himself X, Kamen Rider X calls himself V3, Sky Rider calls himself Amazon, Amazon calls himself Riderman, and Riderman just isn't there even though he's in several other shots. Saban's job was never to duplicate the Kamen Rider experience shot for shot. It's not what happened with Power Rangers or VR Troopers, but his job was to increase the viability of the brand in the market where it was licensed. Masked Rider set the franchise back in the US market a full decade. In 2008, Kamen Rider Dragon Knight aired on the CW, developed by Adness Entertainment in cooperation with Toei and Ishimori Productions. They kept the Kamen Rider name both to maintain a greater degree of fidelity to the source material, but also to distance themselves as much as possible from the Saban adaptation of the 90s. While it was an impressive adaptation that pleased Toei executives and won a Daytime Emmy for stunt coordination thanks to newly shot fight scenes, it was canceled before it could finish its single season, and no US adaptations have been made since. Perhaps a sign that Kamen Rider isn't a viable brand in the US, or perhaps Toei and Ishimori were right that Saban's Masked Rider did more damage than anyone had previously thought. It's like someone showed a bot 1,000 hours of Power Rangers and asked it to write its own Power Rangers script. 3 kids become superheroes dressed like robot bugs after breaking into a haunted house and meeting a genie that looks like Elvis. They have to fight the forces of evil and maintain their secret identities while trying not to get eaten by Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, and the Mummy, who live in the haunted house with the genie who gave them their powers. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Big Bad Beetleborgs. Big Bad Beetleborgs is an 88-episode live-action television series that ran 2 seasons from 1996 to 1998. It's what happens when everyone in the writer's room is pitching ideas and no one ever says no to any of it. Yes, great ideas, all of it. Put all of it in. Andrew and Josephine McCormick, along with their friend Roland Williams, are challenged by 2 pretentious jerks named Van and Trip to spend an hour in Hillhurst Mansion. Hillhurst Mansion is notorious in the town of Charterville for being haunted. Haunted by what or whom is the question. Once inside, the 5 kids quickly discover that they're, real monsters. Similar to, but legally distinct from, the Universal monsters are Saban-verse versions of Dracula, Frankenstein, Mummy, and the Wolfman, Count Fangula, Frankenbeans, Mums, and Wolfgang Wolfie Smith, respectively. The monsters make clear their intent to eat the kids, but their efforts are spoiled by the accidental arousal of a genie-like entity called Flabber. Flabber, a mix of Jay Leno, Elvis, Liberace, Beetlejuice, and Jim Carrey's The Mask into a single entity that resembles but is legally distinct from Robin Williams' genie from Disney's Aladdin. In exchange for ending his imprisonment in the haunted pipe organ in the haunted mansion, Flabber offers Drew, Joe, and Roland a single wish. After a moment reflecting on how to use their wish, they decide to become real-life comic book superheroes. Makes sense, Roland's family owns a comic book store called Zoom Comics. It's a frequent hangout for all the kids in town, and there's nothing hotter in comics than the Beetleborgs. In fact, the reason Drew suggests they use their wish to become superheroes is to impress a girl named Heather who works at the comic book store. Big Bad Beetleborgs is a love story. After a brief misunderstanding where Flabber turns the kids into actual beetles, Drew becomes the Blue Stinger Beetleborg, Joe is the Red Striker Beetleborg, Roland is the Green Hunter Beetleborg. As the Beetleborgs, the kids are covered in powerful armor with weapons and abilities to match. Drew's telekinesis, Joe's super strength, and Roland's super speed can all be utilized even when the kids aren't transformed, but no television or movie wish has ever been granted that didn't have unintended consequences. Flabber is a bit eccentric, and in the process of bringing the comic book heroes to life and merging their powers with the 3 well-intentioned kids, he also brings the villains of the story to life. The Magnivores and their leader, Vexor, are now as real as the heroes. Even if the kids didn't want to be superheroes, now they have no choice. They must ally themselves with Flabber and protect the town of Charterville, or Vexor will easily conquer it. One step toward total world domination. In 1993, Saban Entertainment introduced the world to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, a dream fulfilled for Saban himself, having tried and failed to bring multicolored Japanese superheroes to the United States many years before. Saban Entertainment's incredible success adapting Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger into Mighty Morphin Power Rangers established a new template for Saban and others to follow for quick, inexpensive to produce television for kids. It demonstrated that there was a new market of consumers ready to watch and purchase all the associated merchandise, which would also be inexpensively imported from Japan. Saban Entertainment successfully replicated the formula with other Japanese shows as well. Masked Rider in 1995 borrowed footage from Kamen Rider Black RX, and more importantly, 1994's VR Trooper, which borrowed footage from Superhuman Machine Metalder, Dimensional Warrior Spielbahn, and Space Sheriff Scheider. VR Troopers lasted 2 seasons for a total of 92 episodes, making it the second most successful Saban live-action television superhero adaptation after Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Where Power Rangers used footage from a subgenre of Japanese superheroes called Super Sentai, and Masked Rider mirrored the Kamen Rider subgenre, VR Troopers was the beneficiary of the Metal Heroes subgenre. Metal Heroes as a subgenre was born in Japan in 1982 with the series Space Sheriff Gavan. Like Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, each year since 1982 brought a new Metal Heroes series with new characters, new armor designs, new villains. Most of them revolving around a cybernetically enhanced or robotic law enforcement officer of one type or another. That changed in 1995 with the series Juko Bee-Fighter or Heavy Shell Beetle Fighter. The heroes were still cybernetically enhanced superheroes, but now the armor was distinctly insect-inspired in its design. Whether in Japan or in the US, the goal of these shows is ultimately to sell toys. The annual reboot means an annual refresh of the toy shelves. The point of the thing is to constantly renew the look, the theme, the gadgets, the giant robots, the everything. But if the sales are lacking, then more drastic measures have to be taken. In another world, VR Troopers goes on for one more season, and Juco B-Fighter is the new theme for their armor and gadgets. Saban was precariously low on footage remaining from the original 3 shows that made up VR Troopers and needed to decide how to proceed. A transition from one series designs to another needs to be accounted for in the narrative. 2 seasons in, VR Troopers wasn't doing so well on the toy shelves. Masked Rider was also languishing, neither living up to the standards set by Power Rangers. Saban took the opportunity to go in a different direction to make something that stood out from what they had previously produced. Ranger, Kamen Rider, Juco B-Fighter, and all of the Japanese series that Saban pulled from were more violent and more mature in their presentation in Japan than the adaptations in the US. The result was a collection of shows whose audience skewed even younger in the US than they did in Japan. Saban Entertainment embraced that idea and developed a show that was hyper-targeted to what the kids were into, from Goosebumps to Ace Ventura to, Power Rangers, and making the kids themselves the heroes.
Oh man, I told you the Beetleborgs house was haunted. Whoa, check it out, a haunted house playset, just like the show, with all the house monsters and Flabber. Cool, collapsing stairs. Hold on to the railing, Flabber. On your way down. Hey, look, a revolving bookcase.
Beetleborgs Haunted House playset comes with monsters and Flabber. New Beetleborg Metallics action figures, each sold separately. Bandai, action satisfaction.
Substantial time is given to the characters out of costume, developing the characters without their supersuits. The first 2 episodes of the series hardly feature any of the footage borrowed from the original Japanese source. Saban Entertainment did so much work to create the world that one wonders if they could have made the show without even using any Japanese footage at all. But you can't sell the toys that already exist without using the footage of the action that already exists. By the end of the first season, it was time to wrap up the plot lines that included character designs from Juco B-Fighter and move on to the next season's worth of character designs and fight scenes from B-Fighter Kabuto. Big Bad Beetleborgs became Beetleborgs Metallics for Season 2, and comic book artist / Beetleborgs creator Art Fortunes, along with his evil brother Les Fortunes, became integral parts of the narrative, their creations battling each other in the streets on a daily basis, trying to destroy and or protect the small town. Right or wrong, the cast of Big Bad Beetleborgs and Beetleborgs Metallics were non-union to keep the cost of the production as low as possible. Like Power Rangers before it, that caused some narrative issues that required extra creative writing. Shannon Chandler, who played Jo, left midway through the first season, replaced by Brittany Konarzewski. The writers covered up this change in casting by having her character fall victim to a spell that changed her physical appearance. Flabber casts a counterspell that makes everyone in the world think she still looks and sounds the same, a solution that every show should use from now on. The cast also featured Vivian Smallwood as Roland's grandmother, Nano Williams. She, along with Roland's parents, are the owners and managers of Zoom Comics. In 2006, Vivian appeared on an episode of America's Got Talent as Rappin' Granny. Billy Forrester, who played Flabber and sang the extended version of the Beetleborgs theme song, was not only a contestant on the US version of The Weakest Link, but he won, taking home nearly $60,000. Wherever Saban Entertainment can be found, Shuki Levy will be there. But not on the theme music this time. The series music was composed by Einan Zur. Levy, a prolific composer, co-wrote the first 2 episodes of Big Bad Beetleborgs with Shel Danielson, and, like VR Troopers before, directed both episodes, setting the tone for the rest of the series to follow. Most of the toys you could have wanted from Big Bad Beetleborgs had already been produced by Bandai in Japan for Juco B-Fighter and B-Fighter Kabuto. Action figures in multiple scales for all 3 hero characters, villains, and characters like Shadowborg, the evil clone of Drew's Blue Stinger Beetleborg. Battery-powered vehicles like the Blue Stinger RV, full-size roleplay items like the Sonic Laser or the Thunder Stinger, deluxe robots like Gigantus, the Mobile Attack Carrier, and even a Beetle Battle-based playset that came with all 3 mini ATV vehicles and smaller scale figures. And remember, any products that existed at the time for Juco B-Fighter and B-Fighter Kabuto, or that have been produced since, are also Beetleborg toys. In 2015, Bandai released fully articulated 6-inch scale versions of all 3 heroes that will fit right in with your import Power Rangers, Masked Rider, and VR Troopers figures. Beetleborgs appeared in comic books in our world as well, and that's a good thing regardless of however brief it was. Despite Saban's ownership of both the Power Rangers and Beetleborg franchises, and their intent to do so, they were unable to execute a crossover on either series. In 1997, that crossover would finally happen in Acclaim and Valiant Comics. Saban presents Power Rangers Turbo vs. Beetleborgs Metallics. It was the second of only 3 issues of a comic anthology series called Saban Powerhouse. If nothing else, it's easier and a heck of a lot cheaper to pull off a crossover like that in the comics rather than trying to develop it for television. Unfortunately, the Beetleborgs got caught up in the wild storm called Extreme Studios, headed by Rob Liefeld. Liefeld, one of the founders of Image Comics in 1992, was one of the hottest artists in the business at the time. In 1996, Extreme Studios owned the license to produce comics based on Saban Entertainment properties like Power Rangers and Beetleborgs. However, Liefeld had his hands full in 1996. Marvel was suing him over his creation of a character that wasn't legally distinct enough from Captain America. His Image co-founders and business partners were kicking him out of the business because he was making a lot of decisions that were detrimental to their businesses. Only one issue of Power Rangers Zeo was ever produced, written by Tom and Mary Bierbaum, illustrated by Todd Nauck. Advertisements in the book teased the possibility of additional issues of Power Rangers Zeo, a Power Rangers Youngblood crossover, and a Beetleborgs series. It's fun to imagine what might have been, but as a wise man once said, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. Happy Meal toys, branded sunglasses, stickers. Beetleborgs weren't featured on quite the same scale of licensed merchandise as Power Rangers, but they added to the sustained Saban Entertainment presence throughout kids' media. Some episodes of Beetleborgs were released on VHS by 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment in the 90s. In 2001, the rights to Beetleborgs transferred to Disney with the purchase of Fox Kids Worldwide, which included Saban Entertainment. In 2010, Saban's new company, Saban Capital Group, purchased the Power Rangers and Beetleborgs back from Disney and started releasing the series on home media. By 2015, Shout Factory had released the entire series on DVD. You can track down the physical media, or you can purchase all of Season 1 streaming in standard definition on Amazon. The future of distribution is up to Hasbro, as Beetleborgs were part of the purchase of Saban Capital Group in 2018. Beetleborgs ended when the supply of footage it was borrowing from Juco B-Fighter and B-Fighter Kabuto ended. It's the inherent danger of relying on another production's content. One year they might just stop making the things you need to make your show. You can go along with the new direction, make your own new scenes with the existing costumes, or call it quits. Where Power Rangers maintained a consistent model of costumes, themes, characters, and tone over 30 years, 45 in Japan, the Metal Heroes series essentially ended in 1996. 1997's B-Robo Kabutak took a complete tonal shift, looking more like amusement park characters, an extreme departure from the Robocop-ish military and police heroes that had been the focus. Even though Beetleborg Metallics was a solid performer through Season 2, Saban Entertainment chose to take the hit and focus their efforts on the continuation of the Power Rangers franchise. And while Power Rangers has changed ownership more than once, it continues through today. During its time at Disney in 2005, there was talk about a potential Beetleborgs spin-off that would have focused on the various monster characters that lived at Hillhurst Mansion, but that never materialized. Sometimes it is better to leave the dead undisturbed. Who knows what might have been unleashed from the haunted organ this time. It wasn't the Beetleborgs themselves, but some of the suits made an appearance on Power Rangers in 2002 as part of the Machine Empire. During the Power Rangers 10th anniversary celebration episode Forever Red, 9 former Red Rangers and the current Wild Force Red Ranger are seen battling General Venjix and his associates. Venjix is the Shadowborg suit from Big Bad Beetleborgs. His associates are either renamed suits from Beetleborgs or suits that have been mixed and matched to create new characters. Beetleborgs as a trademark is currently abandoned. Hasbro's focus is on the Power Rangers, and any characters that might be featured appear as part of that series. Metal Heroes have made appearances over the years, including Space Sheriff Gavan as Captain Chaku and Jiraiya as Sheriff Skyfire. Big Bad Beetleborgs and Beetleborgs Metallics were a highly successful series with ratings that actually outpaced the ratings for Power Rangers during those seasons. They were a creative high point for Saban Entertainment and their unique production process, even though it was that very process that led to their demise. It was a turning point for one of the most popular and influential franchises of all time, a milestone for both the production and the audience. For some, it was the end of the road. For others, the moment everything shifted into Turbo. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Turbo, a Power Rangers movie. Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, is a Power Rangers movie released in 1997, written by Shel Danielson and Shuki Levy, directed by David Winning and Shuki Levy. It's the second trip to the movie theater for the franchise, but this time with a smaller budget, fewer ticket sales, and 20% more child endangerment.
You're not part of the Turbo team! Don't run!
Somewhere deep in space, an opening crawl text delivers a significant amount of exposition. Sassy space pirate Divatox and her band of evil minions are on the hunt for the great space wizard Larigo and his magic golden key. The golden key is the only thing that can unlock the dimensional gateway of the universe, which Divatox needs in order to release a terrible demon-like creature named Malagor, whom she intends to marry, bringing forth a reign of terror on the galaxy. Larigo's only chance is to seek the help of powerful friends. Smash cut to the Power Rangers training for a charity martial arts tournament. On the line is $25,000, which, if they win, they can use to prevent the Little Angels Haven Youth Shelter from permanently closing. That's of particular interest to the Power Rangers friend and youth shelter resident Justin, whose mother passed away and whose father gave up custody. His luck is about to turn because Blue Ranger Rocky DeSantos hurts his back during training, opening up a spot for a kid with at least as much attitude as a teenager. Justin will get to live out the fantasy of every kid who ever watched Power Rangers as Zordon chooses him to be the next Blue Ranger, just in time because it's going to take the entire team and their new Turbo Zords to rescue Larigo from Divatox and stop Malagor before their terrible marriage destroys the universe as we know it. The first Power Rangers movie, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, was released in June of 1995, hot on the heels of the first 2 seasons of the mega-hit Fox Kids television series Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. The Power Rangers were a bona fide pop culture phenomenon that reshaped the landscape for kids' media, marketing, and merchandising, gobbling up billions of dollars in the toy aisle. Despite making nearly $70 million at the box office, the first Power Rangers movie began to reveal cracks in the young franchise. Producers had to make decisions about what the future of the franchise would be, given its historically low production budget and over-reliance on previously existing fight footage from Japan. See, Power Rangers as a TV series was hastily assembled by Saban Entertainment for Fox Kids in 1993. The idea was to very inexpensively adapt the already successful Super Sentai series from Japan by recycling all of the action footage dubbed with English-speaking actors. That meant that at least a third of every episode was nearly done before production even began. That saved a lot of money, as did Saban Entertainment's insistence on working with non-union performers, which we will come back to in a moment. By the second season of the US television series, Saban was married to costumes that the Japanese series had already moved on from. The idea of abandoning the iconography of what had so quickly become a billion-dollar franchise was antithetical to the way business was done in the US. The 1995 movie was an attempt to cash in on the Power Rangers craze and use it as a mechanism to transition to the next wave of Ranger suits and robots and toys, a formula that, if successful, could be repeated every year thereafter. However, the movie was shot at the same time as the second season of Power Rangers, which came as a surprise to the non-union cast members who weren't being paid anything extra for the feature film. Heck, they were barely being paid anything to begin with. Fed up with low pay and dangerous working conditions, Austin St. John, Walter Jones, and Tui Trang, 3 of the 6 original Rangers, walked out. As a result, the Power Rangers theatrical debut in 1995, just 2 years into the franchise, featured 3 second-generation Rangers: Steve Cardenas, Johnny Young Bosch, and Karen Ashley. The movie was considered a box office success, but a critical failure even with fans of the series. It was subsequently rendered non-canon when 1995 Season 3 featured a 4-episode arc that essentially told the same story as the movie again, but differently and completely without movie villain Ivan Ooze. Catherine Sutherland replaced Amy Jo Johnson, the original Pink Ranger, midway through 1995 Season 3. At the conclusion of Season 3, the Yellow Ranger was replaced for a second time with Nakia Burris. By the time production began on Season 4 in 1996, Jason David Frank and David Yost were the only Season 1 Rangers left on the cast. Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, was shot simultaneously with that 4th season, titled Power Rangers Zeo, the first season to drop Mighty Morphin from the name. Longtime Power Rangers producer, director, and writer Shuki Levy intended for 1997's Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, to be a reunion of the original 1994 cast, but fate would not have it so. Austin St. John and Amy Jo Johnson, the original Red and Pink Rangers, agreed to return if there was a way to make it interesting for them, to let them do something different with their characters, if, in their words, they could be evil. On the other hand, original Black and Yellow Rangers, Walter Jones and Tui Trang, refused to give up their union membership in order to be a part of the production. David Yost, who was already shooting Season 4 and did agree to be in the movie, walked out during production of both the film and the series due to relentless homophobic harassment that dated back to the beginning of the series. Early drafts of the script featured Yost in a prominent role as Billy, the technical consultant to the Power Rangers instead of a Ranger himself. Billy would have played a role in the development of the new Rangers gear for the movie, but his departure resulted in a restructuring of both Power Rangers Zeo and the Turbo movie. That script was written and rewritten by Shel Danielson and Shuki Levy. Danielson had written dozens of episodes of Power Rangers. Levy was, of course, one of the key producers of the series, as well as one of the main writers and directors. Levy and Danielson had just co-written a film that I am pretty sure was unrelated to the Power Rangers franchise called Exception to the Rule, starring Sean Young, Kim Cattrall, and Eric McCormick, and directed by David Winning. Winning had been an independent filmmaker for most of his career up to that point, making small films with non-existent budgets, but also building a portfolio of television series like Friday the 13th the Series, Street Justice, and Are You Afraid of the Dark? Winning was excited about the offer to direct Turbo. In his mid-30s, it was the first time he'd been given the chance to work on a high-profile, big-budget action movie. Those are my air quotes, not his. He wanted to make the kind of movie that he would have loved going to see as a kid.
With a joke hole that's just for farts. They replace your real toilet with a fart toilet?
When was the last time you got any action in a movie theater?
Never mind.
Get ready.
Here comes the bride!
Oh, man, for the biggest,
You're going on a diet the minute we get back!
baddest, most awesome rumble in the universe.
Thinking about it just gives me goosebumps. That's my man! Yeah!
Turbo, a Power Rangers movie.
I didn't even get a honeymoon!
Rated PG. The power event of the year arrives this Friday, only in theaters.
The script went through multiple rewrites, but the final shooting draft titled Turbo Power Rangers Race to the Volcano was still epic in length and breadth, taking the Rangers around the world, fighting monsters, wrestling alligators, creating Zords, falling in love with mermaids, underwater fights, damaged Ranger suits, and more. On top of all that, Turbo was going to rectify two mistakes the first Power Rangers movie made. 1. This time, stay in continuity, and 2. Save Saban some money reproducing the Japanese costumes and Zords that could then be reused in the Power Rangers Turbo series that immediately followed the movie. The goal was a seamless transition from the television to the movie theater and back again. Instead of trying to reinvent the franchise, the new approach was to make it required viewing. Turbo got a smaller budget than the 1995 Power Rangers movie and less time to shoot. The 1995 film was shot over 4 months in Australia, Turbo in about 4 weeks in Tennessee, Hawaii. 4 months in Australia, Turbo in about 4 weeks in Tennessee, Hawaii. Tennessee, Hawaii, California, and Japan. The 1995 film was shot over 4 months in Australia, Turbo in about 4 weeks in Tennessee, Hawaii, California, and Japan. After David Yost's departure from the production, Jason David Frank was the only remaining Season 1 Ranger. For Season 4 Power Rangers Zeo, he switched from the White Ranger to the Red Ranger, which is traditionally the leader of the team in all of the Japanese series, and, more importantly, the guy assigned to the red vehicles for all the toys. Steve Cardenas, who became the Red Ranger after Austin St. John left the series, was moved from red to blue for Zeo during production of Power Rangers Zeo, and the Turbo movie Cardenas found himself going through the same motions as his predecessor, Austin St. John, attempting to rally the team to ask management for more money. As before, management still wasn't ready to concede anything. The result was Cardenas' Blue Ranger being written out of the series and the film. His character hurts his back early in the movie as the Rangers train for the competition.
Has that ever happened to you? Call me right now, please.
The new Blue Ranger also came from a previous Shel Danielson-Shuki Levy film that I'm pretty sure is also unrelated to the Power Rangers. Rusty, A Dog's Tale starred Blake Foster as an orphan named Jory. Yori? You say Jory or Yori? I haven't seen it yet. Levy was so impressed with Foster's ability to play an orphan that he brought him in to play Justin in Turbo, turning the franchise on its head, introducing the concept that one of the Rangers could be the same age as the kids who were watching it. Power Rangers was no longer just inspirational, it was aspirational. In the movie, Justin accidentally discovers the secret identities of the Power Rangers after Cardenas' Blue Ranger is hospitalized. Zordon rewards his snooping with the opportunity to become the youngest Ranger in history and the ability to become an adult-sized human every time he morphs. While it wasn't a total reunion of the original cast as Shuki Levy had hoped, 3 out of the original 6 did appear, as well as series regulars Paul Schreier and Jason Narvi as Bulk and Skull, and Winston Richard as Zordon. The new central villain is Hilary Shepard Turner's Diva Talks, but Rita Repulsa and Lord Zed do make a brief cameo. Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, opted for more conventional visual effects over the computer-generated imagery of the 1995 movie. Costumes for characters like Elgar and Malagor were designed by the Chiodo brothers, known for their extensive portfolio of movie magic, including films like 1986's Critters, 1988's Critters 2, 1991's Critters 3, and 1992's Critters 4. Despite the lengthy script, according to director David Winning, they shot it all. Everything. The mermaid romance between Adam the Black Ranger and Mandika the Mermaid, the underwater fight against Diva Tox's minions in an attempt to save Jason and Kimberly that would have left the Rangers' suits in tatters, necessitating new suits. The jungle battle where Tommy and Catherine use a blowtorch to fend off a crocodile while they look for Larigo, an even longer, more treacherous journey through the volcano to find Malagor's lair. But the original cut of the film turned out at a robust 2.5 hours. Winning said the script was easily 20% longer than any movie script he'd worked with. They easily could have split the action into 2 movies. But the nature of the film being a setup to the next season of Power Rangers didn't allow for that. So all those extra pieces, all those character moments, that turbo flavor had to be left on the cutting room floor.
Well, that gets into the political territory, which we'll get into. I actually wasn't that involved with the editing by the end because other people kind of took over toward the end. I didn't get fired, so to speak, but I got shuffled off the movie toward the end, which was sad. It was a really good experience, but toward the end it got to be too huge, and other people were involved and taken over. And I would have tried to leave more in than was there. There was a whole cool crocodile fight with the flamethrower and the whole mermaid sequence and a bunch of other much more elaborate sequences that just kind of got pulled out. It's not like that's a new thing for me. A lot of the movies I work on end up a little overlong, and they end up cutting stuff, and you always lose some of your babies and some of your favorite scenes.
Winning thought for sure those cut scenes would end up on a DVD release at some point. However, as of this video, they are considered lost media. None of them have surfaced, but for every mystery, there is someone somewhere who knows the truth. Perhaps that someone is watching. Perhaps it's you, Greg. Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, hit theaters March 28th, 1997. It opened with over $3 million its first weekend, then scooped up about $6 million more around the world by the end of its run, essentially breaking even, grossly underperforming relative to the first movie 2 years earlier. Some critics attacked the campiness of the production, the dialogue, and the storyline, while others praised the performances by Hilary Shepard Turner as Divatox and Amy Jo Johnson as Kimberly. Synergy was the word of the day, as the movie being themed with the next season of the television series meant a longer shelf life for the toys and related merchandise. Anything that was produced and released for the film was technically for the show as well. As always, a full complement of action figures, robots, and roleplay items. Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, was released on VHS and Laserdisc in July of 1997, just 4 months after its premiere in theaters. Shout Factory released it on Blu-ray in 2019. As of this video, you can buy it or rent it digitally on various streaming platforms. Director David Winning attributes the box office underperformance to several things. 1, it was released in March, the doldrums of movie season. Nothing exciting happens in March. 2, the first era of Power Rangers fans were aging out. And that's true. Fans were split specifically on the response to Justin, a child, being added to the Power Rangers roster. Despite the show being targeted at 5 to 8-year-olds, fans on the older end of the spectrum, perhaps 12 or 13, who discovered it in the first season would have been pushing 16 or 17 years old by the time Turbo was released. Far too old, far too culturally sophisticated to waste their time on a show that was no longer taking itself seriously. This is supposed to be a show about teenagers with attitude. Under 13 years need not apply. Hard to say how much of that was also a response to the fact that the original cast, robots, suits, everything from that magical first season was nearly gone. Jason David Frank, second-generation Rangers Cardenas, Bosch, Sutherland, and third-generation Ranger Baris would all hand off their powers to new Rangers halfway through the 5th season. Winning drove off with the satisfaction of having created something beloved. Thanks to VHS sales, Turbo made over $165 million and successfully ushered in a new generation of Power Rangers fans.
My memory of it, when I think of the bad reviews, is sitting in, I went with my girlfriend at the time, and we sat at the end of the movie. This little kid came running up the aisle when the credits were rolling, and he's like, I'll never forget this. He ran up the aisle, and as he passed me, he said, "That's the best movie I've ever seen." Right, which is to me, it was really gratifying to know that a lot of kids really liked the movie when it came out.
The movie was a bridge to the future of Power Rangers, a point at which they embraced what the franchise would become, matching the Japanese Super Sentai series season for season, refreshing the cast and merchandise every year for the next 12 seasons, shifting into Turbo. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was born in the East and adapted to the West. A child of 2 distinct storytelling perspectives, its identity equally rooted in each culture. No one will ever know what Power Rangers would have been if it was a uniquely Western creation, but one show gave us a brief glimpse into what it could have been. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog. Please note right up front here that I am not Irish. I watched some YouTube videos, but I do not have a lot of experience pronouncing Irish names. The names of places and characters are spelled differently depending on the source, and the show itself is inconsistent with pronunciation from actor to actor. I'm not going to try to do an Irish accent. I'm going to try to do my best. Mystic Knights of Tir na nog is a 50-episode live-action television series that originally aired in the United States from 1998 to 1999 on Fox Kids. It's live-action but has a lot of computer-generated monsters and environments that, even at the time, stretched the suspension of disbelief. 10 years of war born from a grievance between families rages on between the land of Kells, ruled by King Connacher, and the forces of Temra, ruled by Queen Maeve. But things are changing. Queen Maeve has come to Kells under the premise of a peace treaty signing that seems too good to be true. And it was. The whole thing was a distraction for Maeve to launch a sneak attack and seize Kells, reclaiming what she says is her birthright. But the plan was discovered just in time. Maeve and her assistant General Torque, formerly of Kells, escape using Maeve's dark sorcery, proving to King Connacher and his master of the mystic arts, the druid Carherd, that they are going to need some help in order to defeat Queen Maeve. Especially because Queen Maeve isn't satisfied with the current contract she has with the Dark Fairy Lord Mitre. She asks Mitre for even more power, to which he agrees, for a price to be named later. He gives her a new runestone set atop her already spooky-looking Havoc staff that, at the very least, gives her the ability to create monsters whom she can deploy at will against the minions of Kells, to tear down their walls and crush their spirits, to tip over their wooden rail fences and frighten their goats to the ends of the earth. King Connacher needs a miracle to save the day. He decides he's going to surrender to Queen Maeve rather than send his soldiers to death in battle. Unless anyone has any other suggestions. Anyone? Anyone? Carherd can, see the future a bit sometimes. He can conjure brief illusions, but he's got nothing on Queen Maeve's dark powers. He does, however, have a card up his sleeve and relates the story of Tir na nog to King Connacher. Tir na nog, a mythical place where dwell the little people, or fairy folk, magical creatures whose ancient scroll foretold of a mighty warrior called Draganta who would bring peace to the realm for 100 lifetimes. A scroll that also shows the mark the Chosen One would bear. That Chosen One turns out to be Rowan, an orphan that Carherd found as a child and raised as his apprentice. Despite Carherd's and King Connacher's protestations, despite the fact that Carherd doesn't even have the entire scroll and therefore cannot even be sure that the scroll isn't a key to unlocking ultimate evil, Rowan insists that it is his destiny and begins the quest for the mythical warrior Draganta. Rowan is joined by his friend the thief Angus, King Connacher's daughter Princess Deirdre, and Ivar, a prince from the land of... well, he's not from around here. Together they find the secret entrance to Tir na nog and meet the leader of the fairy folk, King Finvera, ruler of Tir na nog, a powerful conduit of fairy magic as well. After proving their worthiness, King Finvera blesses the four young heroes with new magical weapons based on the four elements of matter. For Rowan, the Sword of Kells, able to shoot blasts of fire. For Deirdre, the Whirlwind Crossbow, able to shoot hurricane force blasts of air. For Angus, the Terrasling Mace, able to shoot massive boulders or quake the earth. For Prince Ivar, the Barbed Trident, able to shoot blasts of electricity even though he's the water guy. They are powerful weapons and do help turn the tide for the moment, but they aren't enough to win the battle. The four heroes take on individual quests, challenging evil guardians to be rewarded with their magical Mystic Knights armors. Mystic Knights of Tir na nog was created by Saban Entertainment in response to a television market flush with live-action superheroes, especially shows for kids, and Saban himself was responsible for a lot of it. In 1993, the floodgates opened when Saban produced Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, a show that adapted a Japanese series called Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger. Fight scenes and the general plots were retained, while the rest of the episodes were rescripted and reshot with American actors and narratives. After the success of Power Rangers, Saban looked for other shows to adapt in the same way, and other studios did as well. 1994 would see Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, produced by DiC Productions, adapted from the Japanese series Denko Chojin Gridman. The market expanded with shows geared toward older audiences that were original creations, more expensive to produce, but not dependent on the existence of shows from Japan. Hercules: The Legendary Journeys and its spin-off Xena Warrior Princess proved that there was more there than multicolored spandex ninjas with giant robots. And how about those computer-generated visual effects? How about them? In 1997, Saban produced a second season of Masked Rider, the fifth season of Power Rangers, and the second movie, Turbo, a Power Rangers movie. They also expanded their portfolio with a live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series called The Next Mutation, their first without reusing imported footage and plots from Japan. Saban was eyeing that audience that Hercules and Xena were bringing in, and that production team was interested in Saban's core audience,
dem kids.
Young Hercules was in development, slated to battle the Power Rangers. Saban wanted to get his own original historical property out there, but was coming up short. Robert Hughes had worked with Saban as a writer, producer, and director on Power Rangers, Masked Rider, VR Troopers, and Big Bad Beetleborgs. He pitched a concept that would appeal to the same audience, but was tied into the fantasy, magic, and adventure of Celtic mythology.
Enter the Fox Kids Storming the Castle Sweepstakes. Win, and we'll turn you into an action figure from the new Fox Kids series, Mystic Knights of Tirnanog. We'll also send you and your family to Ireland for a behind-the-scenes look. Plus, give you tons of Mystic Knights toys. 1,000 of us win a Mystic Knights action figure and ticket to Discovery Zone. To enter, watch Fox Kids for your Celtic clues. Write down 3 clues with your name and address and get it to us by September 18th to Fox Kids Storming the Castle. P.O. Box 4030, Beverly Hills, 90213.
Tir na Nog, or Land of Youth, is the name for the other world. Or rather, it's one of the names for the other world that the other world goes by. Or one of the other worlds that are part of the other world. Status, it's complicated. You may seek out the other world and never find it. Then again, you might get a direct invitation from a beautiful maiden bearing an apple, or a silver branch, or a ball of thread. But, and I can't stress this enough, if you go, do not stay for very long. Time moves faster there. This guy I knew, Oshin, met this girl, Niev, who took him to Tir na Nog. He loved it. Lost track of time, thought he was only there for 3 years, came back, it had actually been 300 years, got off his horse, boom, died. Dropped dead of suddenly being 300 years older. For this production, Tir na Nog is the name of the magical realm where all of the powers could be drawn from. Dark fairy wizards, fire swords, dragons, and whatever else the plot needed. No further explanation for the look or functionality of any weapons, armor, or creatures that came from it. Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog was shot in Ireland and Germany, 2 markets where it fared better than the US where it originally ran. In fact, in Germany, it aired with a different opening theme song that some say is better than the original, but you'll have to judge that for yourself. Shooting a show based on Irish mythology in Ireland resulted in a cast full of Irish performers. Lachlan O'Mearan played Rowan the Mystic Knight of Fire, Lisa Dwan as Deirdre the Mystic Knight of Air, Justin Pierre was Prince Ivar the Mystic Knight of Water, Vincent Walsh was Angus the Mystic Knight of Earth. Mystic Knights is not free from a dual personality. While it is a unique creation with its own Western-inspired mythology, it too is subject to the demands of the toy manufacturers. In Japan, the main thrust of live-action special effects-driven programming, or Tokusatsu, is to sell the associated merch, many times at the expense of story and character development. Saban Entertainment found themselves having to push back against some of Bandai's requests. Ornate magical armor and fire-blasting swords were one thing. That's the cost of producing a show in this market for this audience. But producer Robert Hughes says Bandai wanted to include motorcycles. While Saban was able to avoid including motorcycles, other toy-related items were inevitable. Multiple scales of figures were released with a variety of play features, smaller 5.5-inch figures with more articulation than Star Wars figures, and an assortment of characters that included the 4 core Mystic Knights and several of the villains. Larger 8-inch figures that have even more articulation, more accessories, and removable helmets. Unfortunately, Deirdre didn't get a figure, nor did any of the villains, just the 3 male Mystic Knights. Astute observers will notice that there are some inconsistencies with the action figures when compared to the actual series. One particularly egregious inconsistency. Bad enough that Deirdre, the only female knight, gets excluded from the 8-inch wave of figures, but at least her skin tone is correct, unlike Prince Ivar. As happens with toy lines, even today, figures have to go into production before all of the show elements are finalized. For Mystic Knights, the expectation was that all of the knights were white. That changed with Justin Pierre's casting. But at that point, it was either too late or no one cared. All of the Prince Ivar figures are technically errors, and technically, no figures exist of the real Prince Ivar, Knight of Water. Bandai supplemented the line with more figures with battle action functionality, vehicles, dragons, roleplay accessories like Dragon's Wrath Battle Gauntlet and the Dragon's Breath Dagger. There was also a micro playset for the Castle of Kells. If you missed Mystic Knights of Tir-na-nog, you don't have many options to catch up. One VHS was released in the US and UK. Germany got 2 DVDs with 2 episodes each, but those are in German. It's not currently streaming on any services, but several episodes are available for now on YouTube. Mystic Knights didn't quite reach mainstream pop culture icon status like its cousins, the Power Rangers, while it did have a McDonald's Happy Meal promotion with a surprisingly deep character assortment, including the only figures produced for main characters like Queen Maeve, Mitre, and General Torque. It didn't have much support otherwise. That said, a second season was headed for production. It was going to be called Mystic Knights Battle Thunder. There are logos and some story elements that can be gleaned from pictures of the second wave of toys that were never produced. The first assortment of toys didn't perform the way Power Rangers toys had. That's a high bar, sure, but that's the game. The show was struggling with its purpose. It had actually developed its characters over time, fleshed out its world, but where the production wanted to go didn't match with where the budget needed it to go. Mystic Knights needed to either lean into the silliness of things like the Battle Wagon, a mechanical battle tank that betrayed the tone of the performances, clearly intended to sell toys, or drop that stuff and just be a show about magic, swords, and sorcery that looks like it was shot at a very nice Renaissance fair. I mean that as a compliment. A Sword in the Stone counterpart to Hercules and Xena instead of Power Rangers. It is possible that shooting in Ireland was not as profitable for the production as they had hoped. Ireland has a tax incentive intended to encourage productions to shoot there as a much more affordable alternative to other common locations around the world. But it's all about money one way or another, and ultimately Saban decided to prioritize shows that had more momentum and more marketing potential. Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, the 7th season of Power Rangers, and the English adaptation of Digimon being the primary beneficiaries. There is no reboot of Mystic Knights of Tir-na-nog in the works. The rights to the production aren't completely clear. Saban Entertainment was purchased by Disney in 2001. In 2010, Saban purchased the Power Rangers franchise back from Disney, which he then sold in its entirety to Hasbro in 2018. Hard to say for sure if the rights to Mystic Knights of Tir-na-nog were included in that. Our research suggests that the trademark owned by Saban was abandoned in 2000, so it's possible that you can take your fan film to market without the threat of legal action from Disney, Hasbro, or Saban. Please consult your attorney first. I'm just a guy on the internet. Mystic Knights of Tir-na-nog was, at first glance, another Power Rangers clone attempting to cash in on a market that was white hot for live-action superheroes and demanding more of the same. But beneath the surface, it was a sincere attempt to flip the script on expectations and open up a whole new world, a whole new mythology full of stories that had never been told. It had a look and feel, a tone that set it on the level of the most successful shows in the same demographic market, with financial advantages behind the scenes that gave it a fighting chance. In the end, it was not the decision to be different from Power Rangers that hurt it. It was the decision to be too much like it instead of following the magic they found in their own production, in their own world. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. If you're in the position to help the channel grow, if you would like early access to the videos ad-free, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy. Thank you for sharing this time with us. Leave the word Furbus in the comments below. Let us know if you've made it this far, and also if you have a favorite American adaptation of these distinctly Japanese television series. I can personally never forgive the licensing that prevents the original series from being imported to the US. That said, I do appreciate that for a brief time in the 90s, the toy aisle was like a Super Sentai collector's dream come true with every combinable robot from each series. The only problem, back then as today, is that they could never go back to the years they missed what I would have given to see Sun Vulcan merchandise at Walmart. Cut. Boof.